Ding, 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 ding. You hear that bell? That means the transfer portal is open. This is the On3 Transfer Portal Show presented by Axia Time, the official timepiece of the college football playoff and the best kept secret in college football. Won't be a secret anymore because we'll be talking about it all day today. But also, we're going to be talking about the transfer portal opening for the class of 2000. Well, for the year 2025, your team is going to start building its roster for real now. Yeah, they had signing day last week, but these are the guys that can come in and play right away.
Andy,
Ari,
you know how they do the stock exchange bell?
Yes.
Where would they ring the transfer portal bell?
Well, last year they were ringing it in Columbus, Ohio. I
guess that changes.
Let's bring on our guy, Pete Nakos. Folks, if you don't know this man, Pete Nakos, national reporter for On3. If he didn't say it, it did not happen in the transfer portal. Pete, this time last year, I remember we were here. We were here in Nashville. I get a call from you early in the morning.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm writing a story that says Kyle McCord is entering the transfer portal. Mind you, this is 9 days after Ohio State had lost to Michigan. I'm like, what? The man had started 12 games for Ohio State, and he's bouncing?
Yep. And he landed at Syracuse.
It was
led
awesome.
The nation in passing yards this season. But yeah, that's just one snippet of what the transfer portal can taketh and giveth. So yeah, I mean, and now, right now we have a 20-day transfer portal window that opened this morning. It's been busy. It's been frantic. A lot of quarterbacks already going in right now, and we're going to break it all down, but a really interesting situation right now in the portal.
We haven't had the earth-shattering one like McCord on day one this time, but we've had a lot of names that, you know, guys in the last few weeks have said, hey, I'm going. It kind of, Thomas Castellanos is the one who started it really from Boston College. He was the first one who said, hey, I'm in.
Yeah, Thomas Castellanos, right, leaves Boston College earlier in the season. He officially goes in today, and sources are telling On3's myself and Steve Wiltfong.
On3's myself. I like that.
On3's myself. You should put that in your Twitter
always,
bio.
No. Always trying to give Steve Wiltfong credit here too. That Florida State is going to be a real player for Thomas Castellanos.
Which makes sense because for those who don't know, Thomas Castellanos originally signed with UCF, where Gus Malzahn was. Gus Malzahn is the new offensive coordinator at Florida State. The offense Florida State is going to run is going to be the Gus Malzahn offense, which it was what it always ran because Mike Norvell runs the Gus Malzahn offense.
Yeah.
And so I remember saying this when Gus got the OC job.
Yeah.
And I saw that we had some commenters in the chat saying, oh, there's no way they're not taking BC's quarterback. I'm like, you have to understand. And Pete, I'd like you to speak to this.
Yeah.
How much relationships matter, how much scheme matters,
right?
When it comes to finding your second or third home in college football.
Yeah. When you look at where these guys like to go, right? The top priorities are typically coaches they know, schools that they knew during their high school recruitment or previous portal recruitment, and then also like trying to get closer to home. So for Thomas Castellanos, right? Gus
all
Malzahn,
the above.
Yeah. It checks off a lot of boxes there. So we'll have to see what happens. We reported last night actually that the Liberty quarterback Caden Salter was setting up some visits. He's going to be at Syracuse this Friday. Colorado and Florida State, we mentioned, we're in the banks for visits. We've learned that Florida State is not exactly as high on Caden Salter as last night's report would have reflected. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Seminoles choose to do as they push for
so much of this too, guys, is just like trying to put together a big puzzle, right? Like,
right.
You know, who recruited them, who runs the offense, where's the relationship, whose aunt, went on a date with their uncle 15 years ago. Like, it's all this type of stuff that's going on. And I think that that's really important. And the thing that, we need to always understand. And I do think that there is this certain feeling from fans of Florida State or Big Ten programs, like, oh, we're gonna go get the BC quarterback. It's like, the BC quarterback is really good, and could be really good at your school. And you know how fast, a player's profile can rise just by the.
Here, let me help you with this one. Oh, we're gonna get the Arizona State quarterback. I mean, is he even gonna start? That was the discussion among LSU fans when Jaden Daniels transferred there.
Yeah.
Worked out okay.
How about Arizona State this year? Oh, we're getting Sam Levitt. What did he do at Michigan State?
Yeah, he was like the backup at Michigan
Yeah.
State last year.
He just
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that is that's the conversation. Actually, I do want to ask you about another quarterback, Pete.
Yep.
Darian Mensah, the Tulane quarterback,
Yeah.
who great season this year.
Right.
And you reported that he's probably going into the portal.
Yep.
Said that yesterday. John Sumrall has since said, the Tulane coach, he since said, hey, all these jobs that I'm up for, I'm not going to pursue them.
Yeah.
Does that change the Darian Mensah situation at all?
So Darian Mensah was not recruited to Tulane by John Sumrall, right? We talked about that a little earlier before he jumped on. But the one thing, though, is I think him going back, right? And John Sumrall announced he was going back to Tulane after Darian Mensah's announcement. I think it's going to be something we have to continue to monitor, right? And as part of the news that broke last night about John going back to Tulane, it's a new contract. There's some more revenue sharing assurances. Could that pay for Darian Mensah to return? We'll have to wait and see. But that's just going to be one thing we have to follow.
Who are the biggest quarterback shoppers in the transfer portal?
So you look across the board, Missouri is losing Brady Cook. Drew Pine has struggled as a backup. So Missouri's a landing spot that a lot of people are checking out. Louisville is going all in on Miller Moss. They've kind of had success.
The USC quarterback.
The USC quarterback. They've had success in the portal, right? They brought in the Texas Tech guy,
Tyler
Shuck. So names like that. Now Auburn is a big shopper.
Really?
we might have spent some minutes on Andy and Ari On3 talking about why Hugh Freeze should have done this last year. But yes.
But yeah, the Tigers obviously need a quarterback. Hank Brown, the backup, goes in today. So now there's 2 spots to fill.
Yeah, Holden. Why do I always mess up his name?
I don't know.
Grenier. Griner.
Oh, Griner. Okay.
Griner. He went in too.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're looking at Ashton Daniels, the Stanford quarterback, to maybe go to Auburn. That's one name to watch for Auburn. And then there's the Oklahoma quarterback, Jackson Arnold, right? Everybody wants to know where he's going. Georgia and Auburn have also been thrown out as potential places to land.
What is your perception of the market for Jackson Arnold and how is he being perceived in the early goings of this?
I think that Jackson Arnold ceiling, which may have been dimmed at times at Oklahoma, is still high. And schools,
it's so funny that there's Spencer Rattler's behind you on the screen now.
I can't see that.
Now it's moved
great.
to the Penn State, but Spencer Rattler is a guy who was at Oklahoma who had to go somewhere else and wound up doing good at South Carolina. Started games in the NFL this year. Jackson Arnold, Pete, it's interesting because the offensive line situation and the receiver injury situation at Oklahoma this year made it so I don't even know if you could judge Jackson Arnold on this year.
Yeah, hey, when we're on here, right, live show, Georgia Tech wide receiver Eric Singleton has entered the transfer portal.
Oh,
wow.
It's a 5-hour drive down I-75 to Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah.
They could use him.
So he had 56 catches this year for 754 yards and 3 touchdowns. His 754 yards were the 12th most in the ACC.
Yeah, and he's a very dynamic receiver. I think there's gonna be a lot of people after him.
Yep.
But I mentioned Florida because they're in the market for receivers. He's a name that when we heard he might go in the portal, that one kind of popped with the Florida folks.
Yeah, no, totally. That'll be one might heat up quickly.
Yeah, and another ACC receiver, very good, established, Casey Concepcion at NC State. And he's got an interesting situation, Pete, because like his brother just signed with Kansas State.
Right.
And so you see Kansas State's logo with all these other logos that are going after Casey, and you're like, why? And I'm like, oh, because his little brother just signed there.
Yeah, so Kansas State's going to be a factor this whole way. I think his mother would really like the idea of her sons
boys playing together. Yeah.
But man, is he talented, and a lot of SEC teams are interested in including Alabama and Texas A&M. So that's going to be one that really interesting to watch. And while we talk about wide receivers, Nebraska and Texas A&M are viewed as like the 2 biggest portal buyers at the wide receiver position. Marcel Reed obviously had a really talented player, had a really good year. That wide receiver room is not exactly top notch. And then you look at Nebraska, they're doing everything they can to make sure Dylan Raiola returns for year 2.
Is that really a thing?
I think that they're going to try to do everything they can to make sure that he's happy and has all the weapons around him where he feels like he can win.
I guess he did go to a lot of high schools, so maybe,
he did go to a lot of high schools.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
For real? Did Penn State lose their wallet?
No.
Because Penn State needs to be in the mix there,
Well,
too.
Penn State's in the mix for Concepcion, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Penn State's a school to watch. Yeah.
But, the Penn State, in my opinion, should be one of the largest.
Penn State should be like, if you are a wide receiver,
Come here.
we have money
We'll
for you.
overpay you, and we'll
Yeah.
like give you a golden headboard. Like that to me is a program that could use it. But Texas A&M, Andy, is a good one. Because A&M.
Oh, Pete's got something.
Okay.
Texas A&M offense lineman Cam Dewberry has now entered the transfer portal.
All right. So there you go. The big guys are at a premium.
We should just put the camera on him and every time his phone.
I do love it. I do love it. Well, it's just it's so interesting because like I've got people in the chat reminding me of players that, oh wait, this guy's going to be in the portal. This guy's going to be in the portal. The Truth, who's a Michigan fan in the chat, pointed out Jaheim Otis, the Alabama defensive tackle, and I was like, oh, that's right, he is going into the portal.
Yeah,
and that's another kind of person who you don't find a human like that in the transfer portal that often.
no, and he's someone too who's kind of keeping things close to the vest at this point. We'll have to continue following to see where he's going to go, but he is yet to. I think he officially entered. Would need to go back and check, but that'll be interesting. Hey, someone in the chat asked Dane Key.
Yes,
Dane Key is a very interesting
Kentucky
one.
receiver.
Kentucky wide receiver. Georgia and Nebraska are the two schools to watch right now at this moment. Obviously, his wide receivers coach takes the Nebraska job. That makes Nebraska appealing. And then Georgia is obviously another team in that wide receiver market that we're going to have to be following.
Georgia specifically, because, they're about to go on a national championship run, and I'm not necessarily sure they feel really good about their wideouts. So
you're talking about going into the play? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they feel great about their wideouts at all. They're one or two dynamic playmakers away from being
unstoppable,
back to feeling invincible.
And as we talk about Georgia, the three of us watched that Georgia-Texas game on Saturday night, right? Gunnar Stockton comes in. How do we feel about Gunnar Stockton? Is he the quarterback of the future? That is something Georgia is going to have to answer in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
Right, because Carson Beck's going to the NFL. So you've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Are you a buyer or not? Got a list, and you and I went back and forth on some names last night.
Yeah.
Ethan Onianwa. That's a name. Like, I don't know that the casual college football fan knows who that is.
Yep.
But this is a Rice offensive tackle who, schools wanted him to transfer last year. He didn't. He decides to go into the portal this year after Mike Bloomer gets fired. Rice, turns over. How many schools are going after this dude?
Everyone.
Every single one.
Yeah. It's everyone who needs an offensive lineman has certainly made a phone call at this point.
Yeah.
And he is a diamond in the rough when it comes towards G5 offense tackle who's proven, who has the size and everything he needs to go make a big splash at the next level. So, I mean, we could run through the entire SEC and the top tier of the Big Ten. That's all going to try to make a run at him.
Because everybody needs somebody like that.
Yes. They don't grow on trees.
Yeah.
And while there are 5-star offensive tackles, they can't develop overnight and start and make a huge impact as freshmen.
Well, and also too, the discourse, especially as we have been, talking a lot about Ohio State and what went wrong and all that, is that offensive line injuries are regular. They happen to everybody.
Depth
all
is
the
a
time,
problem
and having
in this
depth.
era.
I feel like having how many offensive linemen, Pete, do you feel like a team needs to have on their team to have good depth? 8? You have to have 8 really good ones, because even teams that have had 2 deeps in the past that had 5 guys on the second string that could have started at other P4 schools now have 2 offensive line injuries and are screwed. So
look at it on Ohio State, right? So recruiting is struggled on the offensive line for Ohio State. They're going to have to do everything they can to make sure some guys come back and retain some top talent. And then I think a lot of the portal is going to be about literally rebuilding the offensive line. And then how many guys do they bring in? 4, 6? I mean, it's going to cost some dollars, but they're going to have to bring in quite a few guys.
Well, yeah, not just Ohio State. The thing that I think is interesting about the offensive line, Andy, is that in the portal, a lot of times getting the best players is you can come and play.
Yeah.
And it's hard to acquire depth in the portal. So there's that balance, right, between going out and getting a guy that's going to start at left tackle immediately the second he gets there, but also bringing in people that might have a few years of eligibility that can provide you depth so that when injuries happen, your season isn't derailed.
And you're also if you're trying to recruit that person who is an all Mountain West or an all American Athletic Conference offensive linemen, they don't want to come sit the bench.
Right.
Like they could just stay where they are and start. So that's the other thing when you're trying to build depth. You got to trust your evaluations because you're probably taking somebody who's young, who was on the bench somewhere else. And is this a person who can grow into somebody who can play for you? Because that's, Pete, I think a lot of people just assume the transfer portal is all plug and play, but it's not. I mean, you look at what Lane Kiffin did at Ole Miss. He did a lot of, I'm going to take this guy with 3 or 4 years of eligibility remaining.
Right.
And then we'll try to develop him here.
Yeah. I mean, look at what he did with Jackson Dart. I mean, I'm aware that things did not go perfectly this season for Ole Miss, but Jackson Dart improved significantly year after year. And I mean, that's just an obvious example. There's other examples too. Jordan Watkins, I believe, as well. But yeah, I mean, Ole Miss and the Louisvilles and Colorados, they're all expected to be big players when it comes to adding talent.
Let's talk about Coach Prime because he's built through the portal the past 2 years. Do you think they're going to turn the roster over as much this year as they did the past 2? Or do you think now they've got a little bit more of a foundational base and then can plug in from the portal?
Yeah. I mean, so one thing that popped up last night, right? Caden Salters looking at Colorado. I'm fascinated to see how that plays out these next few weeks as what does Colorado do at the quarterback position where they bring in Juju, right? And
Juju Lewis, who's a big time recruit. But here's the thing, Pete. It's funny because Caden Salter and Juju Lewis, like if you watch them, physically very similar.
Yeah.
Skill sets look pretty similar.
Yeah.
And Caden Salter would actually be the perfect guy to have Juju Lewis learn from for a year. But Juju Lewis, it strikes me, seems like a kind of guy who went to Colorado because the job's open.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there's some other things too, right? Like obviously Shedeur Sanders, NIL success had something to do with it as well. But yeah, the opportunity to play right away had a lot to do with Juju going there. So what does Colorado do in the portal market at the quarterback position? And does that impact anything? Is that the plan? I've yet to hear that one way or the other.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating to watch. Pete, the quarterback names, you mentioned Miller Moss earlier, but we've got quite a few quarterbacks that we've seen play quite a bit of football, but also some guys that like Devin Brown from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Never really got, he was going to get his chance in the bowl game last year. He got hurt.
Yeah. And
so we never really got a chance to see what he can do. Is this a guy like a former 5-star who can land somewhere and be a star?
I mean, possibly. I think it depends where he goes. I think in my circles, everyone's like, "Oh, he must be going to Utah," like because he's
from Utah.
Yeah. So like,
guys, everybody, like half the quarterbacks in the country from Utah.
Yeah.
So Jackson Dart was from Utah too.
Yeah. So I mean, I by no means do I know he's going to Utah, but like, that was like, so we'll continue to see what's going on there. I'm interested to see how people value Devin Brown. Is Devin Brown still viewed as that 5-star he was coming out of high school? Or do people go back and watch tape and say, like, we don't think it's
I think Devin Brown's got a lot of tape. He hasn't played a lot, but don't you think you have a pretty good sense of what he is at this point?
I agree. Yeah, I'd say so.
I think we're going to find out, who's got those relationships and who's been recruiting somebody for a while, because that's where it's really going to come in. We talked about that with Thomas Castellanos. But you really have to be able to connect dots. Like which coaches, like I'm trying to remember now who finished second in Devin Brown's recruitment.
Right.
So and then where's that coach now?
Wasn't Devin Brown committed to USC at one point, or am I making that up?
I don't think he ever committed to USC.
I think you're thinking Jackson Dart, maybe.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's the case.
Well, Jackson Dart went to USC.
Yeah.
But yeah, Devin Brown was one. He was like he was a fast riser in his recruiting class, and actually was a bit of a late pickup as Ohio State quarterback commits go.
That was a late one.
So, yeah, this is all just
Ohio State's quarterback. Yeah, he was committed to USC, guys.
Wow, look at that.
Wow.
Dude, hey.
Look
at that right there.
Steel
all
trap.
in on Lincoln Riley.
Oh, man. Don't even get me started. Ohio State's quarterback room lost Devin Brown, but it also has 2 5-star freshmen from last year, and then they're signing the number 1 overall player in the country in the following class. And like, I'm very curious, like I'm on like Air Noland watch watch too. Like,
I'm on Aaron Nolan and Lincoln Keenholt's watch. I'll just
Yeah.
be
Yeah,
honest.
and we're look. I know people get mad when we talk about guys that are on rosters that have not said they're going in the portal.
Yeah.
But when there's a quarterback room that's that crowded, it's natural.
It's
If
natural.
nobody left, they would have 6, right? So like,
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
do the math.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about another guy who was a big time recruit.
Yep.
Caused Brian Kelly to dance, but then left. Walker Howard's been at LSU, been at Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Now in again. And I think if you saw the one Austin Simmons drive for Ole Miss against Georgia, you understand why. Austin Simmons looks like the quarterback of the future at Ole Miss. So like with Walker Howard, who was behind Jaden Daniels and Garrett Nussmeier, who is behind Austin Simmons, who people think is going to be really good. How do we evaluate somebody like that?
Yeah, someone like Walker Howard, from everything I've heard, is definitely going to go to a place where he feels like he can play right away, throw a lot of footballs, and maybe take a step away from the big SEC spotlight and just focus on playing.
Replace Darian Mensah at Tulane?
I wouldn't rule Tulane out. I think there's some other schools too in the Sun Belt that are really interested.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's an interesting way to look, because usually these quarterbacks don't want to do that. That's not their MO. But you could do that, become a star, and then pop right back up if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, totally. Sorry, I got sent a fake On3 tweet, so it was thrown off.
Those are always good.
Yeah.
Please don't try to fake out Pete Nakos while he's on the air.
I got fooled with Noah Fafita earlier this week.
You did. How'd you feel about that?
Embarrassed and stupid. Thank you
Good
for bringing.
answer.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it was great because it did allow us to create a mantra that we should all live by. If Pete Nakos didn't say it, it didn't happen. So with that, Pete, we're going to let you get back to work.
All right.
Because there's a lot going on. Your phone is just it's going to jump off that table if it buzzes anymore. So this is amazing. Please, by all means, we know you're going to be right back there. Keep us apprised as we bloviate, because
You got it.
the news is coming fast and furious. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
buddy.
guys.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Andy Ari.
Yep.
So this show is brought to you by Axia Time. This is the official timepiece of the college football playoff, the best kept secret in college football. These are absolutely beautiful watches and heirloom quality, among the coolest designs in the college space. And Axia Time has created a series of limited edition timepieces for all 12 teams in the college football playoff. Each design is limited to only 100 pieces. Check out your team's CFP designs at axiatime.com. I was looking at the website today. It's got, if like you want to celebrate Arizona State making the CFP, you want to celebrate Boise State making the CFP, this is the way to do it. This is so freaking cool. And if you're a watch person, you'll see their specs quickly rise. These watches are a great value for their level of quality and customization. If you don't know a lot about Swiss-made watches, trust me and do your homework. They're a great deal. Check out the designs at axiatime.com. That's AXIA time.com. Commemorate the season in style with a watch that tells so much more than time. Axia Time. Ari, let's talk about what happens now, but let's add another little bit of spice to the mix. JD PicKell,
What's up, fellas?
how we doing?
I'm better now, man. It's awesome having y'all in studio. This is dope.
Host of the Hard Count, letting us sit at his desk.
My favorite thing when we replaced him for a few weeks while he was tending to his newborn daughter was that every morning when we were in this show for the Hard Count, there were people like, is JD back?
Yes.
Which y'all did phenomenally. I am forever indebted to y'all.
Well, you have a very
for
dedicated
filling that
fan
gap.
base.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
dedicated.
I think
Can't look at Ari Wasserman's melon for another second.
That's right.
Where's that buff guy?
Yeah. We need that blonde hair back.
golly. Well, I'm glad to have y'all here, man. This is awesome.
JD, I'm going to ask you, because you are younger than us. You were playing college football not long ago. You have transferred.
Yes.
You actually did. You finished at Cornell. You got your degree, and then you went to Baylor.
Yeah.
And what is that process like?
So I was a part of like the OG portal where it wasn't really in vogue. People weren't really sure I didn't know how it worked. Like I had started reaching out to coaches via email, and they're like, "Are you in the portal?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm going to graduate." So I think I'm like barely graduate, mind you, barely graduate by the hair of my chinny chin chin.
Do you have an Ivy League degree? on your wall?
Some would say, yeah, barely. I have
There's
one.
no such thing.
Yeah, okay,
You either
we
do or
got
you don't. It's
a piece of paper.
You can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit an Ivy League grad.
That's true.
I feel a little bit pregnant.
I think the interesting thing here with this crop is we talked about this last portal Monday.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys from the Ivy League, like you can't play as a grad transfer.
Right.
So you got guys with maybe 3 years of playing experience under their belt and maybe like have developed over those 3 years, maybe late bloomers.
That's
and
how big Thor Griffith got to Louisville.
Joey Slackman's out there in Florida. So I think like that whole portion of the FCS is really fascinating because they're guys that's like, I can either unenroll and hang out in Cambridge, Massachusetts for a semester, which I don't think I'd want to do, or I can graduate on time with all my friends and go play FBS football for my last year of college. So, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense.
So when you got in the portal, like, does it hurt to go in the portal? What's it feel like?
Surprisingly painless.
Okay.
Little colder temperature wise than some would advertise,
Okay.
like 70s, lows, like
it's
high 60s.
See, I thought it's like space. It's like a void.
Yeah, so they've revamped it a lot. It's like Pimp My Ride, Pimp My Portal. Since I was in there, they've like, I mean, they got bells and whistles in there right now.
We put a fish tank in your portal.
This poor nurse is like, I just want to get from A to B without like my tire blowing out. They're like, how about a plasma screen TV in the front seat? She's like, that'll do great. That's the portal right now.
So you were writing emails to like recruiting coordinators?
Yeah. I mean, so you're back at square one. I'm like firing off emails to anyone who has an email. So also it's different for me. Like I am a graduate transfer walk-on trying to find somewhere. I'm not Miller Moss.
Right. You're trying to
one's
get their
banging
attention.
down my door.
Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, if someone will reply back to me, I'm like, okay, this is traction. Even if they're like, hey, sorry, we have no spot for you. I'm like, but you did reply. So this is finding the right person.
There's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance, not right now. But yeah, it's an interesting experience, especially as a grad walk-on. But for these guys, like I can't imagine having your DMs blow up. The second I'm sure you get benched, you're probably having your DMs blow up.
I bet you the portal feels a lot better and more tricked out when you are the apple of everyone's eye.
Well, that's what
100%.
That's what we were talking about, the Rice offensive tackle. And he is going to be recruited by everyone. And I think his name might officially be in the portal. Now we have to check with Pete, but Ethan Onyanwa is going in the portal or is already in the portal. And I imagine the moment it's just like his phone battery is just going to go.
Yeah. I mean, killer pronunciation first by you, because I don't think that's an easy name to say.
Yeah.
Second of all,
having heard you.
Yeah. I mean, second of all, we've talked about this, I think all of us together multiple times. Like if you are a big human being with starts under your belt at D1 football, like, hey, we can use you because there's not a lot of those guys walking around. You know?
Well, and that's the interesting thing is there are some teams now that if they do this right, they can finish this season strong and jump into next season. Like South Carolina, Florida, those two in the SEC probably are the ones that jump out the most. Where you look at the way they finished, they have this young core. They have a quarterback everybody wants to play with in both cases. Like, can you imagine if Shane Beamer and Billy Napier get this portal right? What happens?
The iron is hot, right? I mean, you just said it perfectly. You have a chance to, I think, just pour rocket fuel on a situation that's already starting to bubble a little bit. Like if DJ Lagway goes out and gets a couple of big time weapons, okay, hey, we're cooking here at Florida. And then Florida goes out and wins 9 games, 10 games, makes the college football playoff. Okay, it's the high tide that raises all boats, as we all know. Yeah,
I mean that's part of the reason why I believe that Billy Napier is probably still the coach there, right? Like they feel like if they go out and they spend some money and allocate the funds the right way.
Well, when I talked to Billy last week, he said we maybe didn't have the resources to do the portal the way we wanted to in the last couple of years. And he was pretty upfront about that. And I think they feel like they have it now.
Much better to hear than we just didn't do it. Because that was the thing with Billy, right? It was like, why didn't you guys engage in the sport in the way that it needs to be engaged in? Like, why was Ole Miss steamrolling you when you could have been getting players like that to help your team? And frankly speaking, if they would have done it a year ago, they would have had a better team. That's go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say that has to be one of the first questions whenever you're looking at a job, right? Like if I'm going to look at North Carolina, I'm like, how much money do I have to go get good players? Because if I don't have what I need,
let's talk about that right
issues,
now.
Right?
We hear John Sumrall today saying, I'm staying at Tulane. I'm good. That was a guy that we think North Carolina was looking at. We've heard one person that North Carolina is looking at, Bill Belichick. Like, can you imagine Bill Belichick in the transfer? I mean, Bill Belichick was not a guy who loved free agency back in the NFL. He liked to build through the draft more, but give him a budget in free agency and let him cook. Come on.
What if Bill Belichick takes the North Carolina job and like just does what Brian Harsin did at Alabama? We're gonna do this.
Wow.
We're gonna do this through the. We're gonna do this through the draft, and this is the Tar Heel way.
We're just gonna out evaluate. Yeah. No. But here's the other question, JD. Still no coach at North Carolina.
Sure.
Still no coach at West Virginia. We think that they're gonna land on one here soon. How soon? You got to have somebody pretty soon, don't you?
It's getting late early. Like, I mean, when the transfer portal opens today, and if I am wanting to be competitive out of North Carolina or West Virginia, and I want to acquire the guys it takes to be competitive, like, show me what I'm signing up for. Like, it's hard to decide on a school. I don't know who I'm going to play for. Like, who am I committing to? The athletic director, the location. Like, I don't know.
Michael Jordan,
which is not a bad pitch at all. But the other thing too, I'd be curious to y'all's thoughts on this. If I am one of those schools that is looking to fill a position at head coach, and I'm looking at maybe a coordinator whose season isn't done yet, and they might have 3-4 games left on their schedule left to play if they go play for a national championship. Like, we've seen coaches balance that before. Like, Dan Lanning obviously did that when he was at Georgia, and he gets the Oregon job and he finishes through the national championship. But like, having 1 to 2 games feels very different than looking down the barrel of a whole new season. Like, are y'all hearing anything on how to balance that? If you're like, throwing out a name here, I think Will Stein's going to be a head coach at some point in time.
Agreed. The Oregon offensive coordinator
at some point in time.
Yeah.
If I'm going after him, how does that conversation even begin? How do you recruit?
Well, and that's the question that we've had throughout the year, and I think probably it kept some of these situations from opening. It kept some of these jobs from opening. Plus, rev share starts next year. Everybody's trying to budget for that. Plus, some of the buyouts are so huge. But that's a legitimate question, is if you want to hire somebody who's in the college football playoff, be that a head coach or a coordinator from one of those teams, how much are you hamstringing yourself by them having to work through this portal season?
And can you go hire him? Like, all right, if I'm going to go get and I'm just throwing out names here again, a Jim Knowles, you get a Chip Kelly from Ohio
Spencer
State.
Danielson. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Boise State.
Well,
absolutely.
What you're going to probably end up seeing is that coaches will be doing 2 jobs at once, because that's happened in the past. It's not like, teams have gone on national championship runs and coaches have been hiring. When I was on the Ohio State beat, Tom Herman got hired at Houston and he was like recruiting all day.
I walked across the field after the national title game with Tom Herman after Ohio State beat Oregon, and he puts a Houston hat on. David Bassey, who works for the Falcons now, but was Houston's associate athletic director at the time, like, runs to Herman, hands him the Houston hat. It was like, here you go.
Yeah, and he did the Cougs hand signal on the field, and I might have been standing right next to you because I saw that happen too.
Go ahead.
So that's what you do, and I don't know how. That's a little bit different because the national championship game back then was January 6th or something, and now it's on the 20th. So 2 weeks may as well be 10 years, in this world. But yeah, I don't know, Andy. Does that, or JD? I don't know. Do you think that makes sense? Can a coach do 2 jobs the way that he did anymore, or is it
I think it'd be really hard with this transfer portal recruiting.
In 2014, and this is the only example that comes to my mind, which is why I bring it up. There was no portal, so you were probably more you had to get through signing day. But even if you had a rough signing day back then, it didn't just kill your entire roster. Now, if you're absent for signing day and the portal opening, then you can hamstring your squad for 1.5 years, 2 years because of that. So it is a little bit different than it was 10 years ago.
And you got to have it for spring practice. Like, when I was in the portal as a grad transfer walk-on, again, mind you, not like a Cam Ward caliber player where I need to be there for spring practice, but I'm talking to anyone who will give me advice, high school coach who coached in college, other people that have been in the space. And what they were saying, the timeline was, hey, they're going to get through spring practice. After spring, they'll have an idea of what they need, and then maybe you can have a conversation. Like, how far removed are we from that? We're talking about coaches not being able to take jobs because you got to be in the portal right the heck now to go get somebody. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and also too, there maybe needs to be an adjustment too on the calendar of when this opens.
But I don't think they can because they're not going to change the semester system.
Yeah, the semester system.
Yeah. Can I get y'all's take? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm cutting you off.
No, you're not. No.
I'm trying to make sure we're synced up here,
I feel like we're dancing over here, fella. Okay, we're good.
It's good.
Go ahead, JD.
Well, I was going to ask y'all, like, we get to this part of the year now, and I say, like, it's a routine thing. It's been, give or take 2 years. We're really into this thing. And I'm like, do we really need to have this be as long as it is for kids to enter their name? Like, I get it. If your coach leaves, cool. Like, I'm of the opinion, if you know you're leaving, give them 5 days. Like, you know you're leaving in October, right? Like, Connor Wegman, when he gets benched, he's like, I'm out. Bouncing, right? Like, could we not make this thing like 5 days? Is that a crazy thought?
I don't think that's the worst idea, because the stuff that's going to get bounced back, the stuff that they're not going to, like, changing it to one window. They're not doing that. You have 2 windows now. Anytime you try to take something away like that, you're going to get sued. So they're not going to take that away. But if you shrink it down, but the opportunity is still there, I don't think you get sued over that. Like, I think you may be right. And they reduced it this year. If you were to reduce it to a week or to 5 days, it's sort of like the early signing period being 3 days long, back the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You could have like a 5-day period.
But does that solve the problem of college football playoff happening during window? Like, what is that? Like, what problem does that actually solve?
Well, it doesn't. But then they've already made some, moves to help that, because like if you play deeper, you can enter the portal later.
Sure.
Like the window extends to teams that are already playing.
No, I just mean in terms of like the coaching hiring discussion that we were just
having.
I
don't know that there's a solution to that. Because unfortunately, you're still basing this around college, and most colleges are on the semester system, and there's a natural break between December and January. That's where that happens. If you are going to change schools, that's one of the 2 times you would do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole situation is there's probably not a perfect situation we arrive at, like the college football playoff rankings. Like we are never going to get to a format where we're like 110%. This is the way to do it. There's always going to be, but this could be different. This could be tweaked. But it does feel pretty obvious right now, like the coaching situation, the carousel, we're never going to arrive at like, okay, this is perfect for everyone. This works well.
I got this here, this little jacket at the Polo outlet during Black Friday sales, because I'm a bargain shopper. These people are millionaires. Is it okay that I don't feel bad for them? Figure it out. Like, I don't like, you're getting paid $8 million a year. So just go work extra hard for that 2 weeks or do whatever, or your team's going to, but just figure it out. Like,
I think
these
they
are
will.
big money problems.
I think they will. And I think, like you mentioned, Will Stein or any of, Kirby Smart, when he was hired, worked through at Alabama until it was time to go to Georgia. I think you can probably do that. The only problem is that if you're in a situation where you might have to actively work against your own school.
Yeah.
And usually that's not the problem. But if you wind up in a recruitment in the portal where, let's say you're still the OC at a school that's playing in the playoff, and
at Oregon, and then you're the head coach at USC, like you're going to be going against.
You're going to have a problem there. But I think that probably gets discussed on the front end.
You would hope. You would hope there's some of that.
You could leave. You could say, look, if I'm going to take this job, which would conflict, I'll just leave. If I'm going to take this job, which is clear across the country, different kind of level of player, like we're not going to bump into each other. That's fine. I think you can do it individually.
Yeah.
But this calendar is weird. This calendar is really changed everything, and they didn't expect it. They didn't plan for it, and I don't really know how you fix it now.
It's great for guys like us where we talk about the sport year round. Like I'm all for talking about, big time quarterback.
I would much rather this happen in February.
Yeah, 100%
for the content.
100%. So, but here's the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of like giving us something to talk about for a year, it's like spread it out a little bit for us, though.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But like it does happen again. There's 2. So,
and here's my only thought too. I'm curious to get y'all's take on this. This is fun, like having y'all in the studio, just picking your brains on stuff. Now I'm wondering, with the second portal wave, you have 12 teams now with rosters of good players.
Yes.
That are potentially now, if I'm maybe like wide receiver 2 on a national title contending team, I know that I can go somewhere else and get a whole lot more production and more volume of targets. Like is that second portal window now, that second wave.
You
Like,
mean when are the
little bit more
receivers that are going to
tasty.
land at Texas going to enter the portal?
yeah,
The Isaiah Bond, AD Mitchell,
sure, or
that
vice
type of-
versa. Or if
Yeah.
I'm Texas, I'm going on a run and I don't like Mike Targets enough. I don't think I'm getting enough. Maybe after they get eliminated or after they win the national championship, it's like, okay, now is when there's some big names that end up in there.
Well, actually, it's funny you bring that up, JD, because in the Uber back to the hotel last night, I asked Andy if he thought that because there are 3 times as many teams in the playoff this year, if Monday was going to be more subdued as a result of like 8% of the total program still playing more than it was last year. Like, does that have an impact on the numbers of what we're going to see today? Because like, it does seem like, oh, well, it's only 8 more teams, but 12 teams is 10% of the sport.
Good
So
times.
like,
Good
there's all
times.
the best teams, and a lot of the teams that like the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States are the ones that have really good players who aren't playing a lot that might be more prone to wanting to go in. So I wonder if, like, we were talking about the Ohio State quarterback situation, for
Right.
instance. Like, we're not going to hear today, but like, are we going to hear in 2 weeks? Maybe.
Yeah.
Are we going to hear more about Alabama's defensive line? Does someone want to go or whatever? So I think it's a good point. So
So we had a little news.
that's good. We needed some.
Nakos with Chip Trainum.
Oh,
Chip Trainum, Arizona State, Ohio State, Kentucky, and now somewhere else.
Linebacker and or running back.
That's right.
potentially.
Could be
we're
either
gonna
one.
see
You
where,
somewhere in Florida or somewhere in the Pacific Northwest.
So that he gets the whole
he gets
tour of the
whole
country,
tour of the country.
the tour of Italy.
Yeah. Don't. I'm not hungry yet, but if you bring up the tour of Italy, I will become hungry.
Well, let's tell everybody about Axia Time before we continue. This is the coolest new sponsor because they're the official timepiece of the CFP and of the Heisman Trophy. Limited edition watches commemorating your team's appearance in the college football playoff. You're looking at the Georgia one on the screen. It is gorgeous. These things are Swiss made. They're beautiful. They're actually a great deal relative to the quality that you are getting. If you're a watch person, you'll see their specs and quickly realize they're a great value. If you don't know much about Swiss made watches, trust me, do your homework. They are an incredible deal. Check out the designs at axiatime.com. That's Axia, A-X-I-A, time.com. And commemorate this season in style with a watch that tells so much more than time. And JD, you were in the Ivy League, so you didn't do the bowl games. I did the Sugar Bowl as a freshman in college, and they give you a choice of bowl gifts. You can choose what you want. I chose the watch. It was not Axia Time, which did not exist yet. I wish it had been Axia Time because that one I would still have proudly on display somewhere. The one I got, I believe, turned green after about a week. It was allegedly gold. It turned green after about a week. It's there somewhere. It's somewhere in a box. These Axia Time ones I would have displayed prominently all around the house.
It's funny you say that. Founder of Axia Time, I believe, Penn Lacrosse alum.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I mean, he's not a bowl game guy either.
Was
but
he a
maybe they
mid-
get the
was he a
bowl game
midi?
deal. Was he? I don't know. See,
Was
that
he an
is-
attack?
That is far beyond.
he a
my
deep hole?
area of expertise. I wouldn't put it past him though. Wouldn't put it past him.
Well, listen, you go to Wharton,
Yeah,
you learn how to create a company,
sure.
you make some beautiful watches. I love it. I love it. We're very, very excited to have Axia Time working with us because this is a new sponsor, and I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful relationship, and we appreciate them
These are
helping
pretty.
us with
I'm
this
looking
show.
at them now.
They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful.
Nice.
So the Ohio State one with the red face.
I like how the college football playoff logo is like in the mechanism that's inside the watch with the back.
Yeah,
of the,
it's pretty sweet. And that's what I think if you are especially Arizona State, Boise State, where you haven't been on this stage much, like this is a great way to commemorate that run. And I like the players when they get these are going to be like,
They're sweet.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing the Shador.
oh yeah,
Everyone's
doing the Shador.
I want to see
Absolutely.
Cam Scatterbo in an Axia timepiece get in the end zone in that first playoff game
Boom.
for Arizona State. Just boom, autograph.
Yep.
I mean,
I am glad you brought up Cam Scatterbo because that is a great conversation to have. Now, we don't have all of the names in the portal yet, but like I can tell you right now, the tight end position is full of guys that probably the average college football fan hasn't heard of, that there's a bunch of schools they're going to be all over. So if you don't know Tanner Koziol, the Ball State tight end, or you don't know Charlotte tight end Colin Weber, or North Dakota State safety Cole Wisniewski, like you're going to learn those names. Cam Scatterbo, nobody had heard of. He was at Sacramento State.
Mhm.
And Kenny Dillingham and company found it. Now, he was the Big Sky Conference Offensive Player of the Year his last year at Sacramento State, which is it's a great way to do your homework in the transfer portal, is just look for the all conference teams in the Big Sky, in the Missouri Valley, and say, all right, who might be interested in playing on a bigger stage?
I mean, it is pretty remarkable though that, like, you know, for all the things that Kenny Dillingham has done right, to be able to go get a player who is going to be on Heisman Trophy ballots from a place like Sacramento State when no one's heard of him before. And, you know, frankly speaking, I don't think a lot of people heard of him coming into the year once he even came to Arizona State.
Well, he was very good in his first year as Arizona State. Right. But I guarantee you when he got to Arizona State in 2023,
but people never even heard of him after the year that he had last year. So to see him blossom and play the way that he did in the Big 12 title game the other day was incredible. Also, one of the first players I used in NCAA this year at the beginning of the year, because I was pretty fired up about it.
Hey, hat tip to you too. 2 weeks ago, we're doing the Heisman Trophy, you know, pseudo voting that we do internally on 3, and you're like, I'm putting Cam Scatterbo in my top 3. So like, victory lap to you right there.
I appreciate that. I mean, I was late to the party. I had Cam Ward in my 3rd spot all year, but like when you go actually look at his numbers, they're pretty remarkable.
It's freakish.
Like he's having a great year statistically too. So, you know, I think that, you know, being in a position where you are the engine that's driving a team that's on a 6-game winning streak and just crack the back door of the playoff and doing it in such an entertaining and fun way. Like, I think that's, and you have the stats to back it up. Like, that's like, I got to be careful what I say. Like, you know, you can't, but it's he's a really good player. And I think that it's just an illustration of how a coach can be good at the portal.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned you're a bargain shopper. You can be a bargain shopper in the portal.
Yeah.
You can get really good, helpful players who are coming from a lower level if you understand what you're looking at, if you understand how to evaluate.
I mean, look at Vanderbilt. Like Diego Pavia, obviously he popped a little bit nationally, beating Auburn a year ago at New Mexico State. But you're like, hey, I guarantee the price point for him, who changed your season, that made Vanderbilt cover that over on their 3.5 win total with ease, or 2.5 win total, which was, I mean, phenomenal. But also, like, I guarantee he was a lower price point than a Cam Ward or a fill in the blank, whatever quarterback you want next. He changed your season in a lot of ways.
And a lot of that was a package. You know, a lot of that was the package of Jerry Kill comes to work. Jerry Kill was the head coach at New Mexico State, comes to work with Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. They hire Tim Beck, who was with Jerry Kill at New Mexico State, who was the offensive coordinator that Diego Pavia knew and loved. And it all worked beautifully together.
Yeah.
And that's why we tell you connect the dots. Why when Pete was here, we're talking about Thomas Castellanos, and don't be surprised if Florida State's in the mix for him, because he initially signed with Gus at UCF. Yeah. And Gus is now the OC at Florida State.
And also, too, if you are a bargain product and you have multiple years of eligibility left, I also think, too, that it gives you an extra layer of something to think about in terms of where you're going, because it might not always be the biggest bag. If you go to the right place and have the right opportunity with multiple years of eligibility, your star can rise, but at the same time, too, when your star rises, so do your price. So you know, like then the next year in terms of retention too, like it's not always where do you go to get the biggest bag. I think that like there is going to be, or has to be, a balance of fit and coaching, gelling with the coaching, all the things that help people achieve what their skill set says they can, you know, like that's the thing. So, you know, so much in the NFL is about where does a person gets drafted? How's the fit? How's the scheme? And that's maybe the difference between being an all-pro and getting cut. In college, it's the same thing. If you have the right place for you that's going to illustrate your skill set, then you can flourish in a way that not only puts you in a position to get selected in the draft, but make more money in NIL over the long term.
So speaking of fits and shoppers, and let's go through the schools and identify what they need the most. Ari, you mentioned one earlier. Like, this is one that at this position group, they should be overspending because they kind of have everything else.
Yeah.
So Ari mentioned Penn State and wide receiver.
Golly.
Like, imagine if Penn State got 3 good wide receivers in the transfer portal. I mean, how much could change there?
They beat Oregon. If they have Tez Johnson on their team in that Big Ten title game,
Right.
I think they might beat Oregon because they have that much other, weapons to go along with.
An interesting
it. Weapons is a
example
funny
that
way
you
to say
give.
it,
Why
but-
is Tez Johnson at Oregon?
Because he
Tez
transferred
Johnson
from
grew up with
Troy.
Bo Nix.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that Dan Lanning knew all about Tez Johnson. I imagine Bo Nix was in his ear saying, my guy's down at Troy. You need to go get him.
Hey, Deshaun Jackson is currently playing G5 football. Go get him over here and let's
Right.
go win a Big Ten champ. Well,
Exactly.
not for Bo Nix, but Tez Johnson finished the deal.
But
yeah,
so
to your point.
let's say you're Andy Kotelnicki and you don't have necessarily that relationship with Casey Concepcion or with any of these big receivers in the portal. Throw some freaking money at him.
Absolutely.
Like-
And I mean, I'm curious. I think it starts to a little bit with what happens at quarterback. Because if I am a Casey Concepcion or a Kevin Concepcion, or I'm filling any big portal target here, a Barry and Brown or whoever, if I'm even considering Penn State, my first question is, after how much am I getting to go there? Who's throwing me the freaking football?
Yeah.
And if it's not Drew Aller, I'm like, well, maybe he's gone to the league in this hypothetical. Like,
Yeah, is it Bro Purvula?
I don't know.
Or is
Yeah,
Bo
what does it look
Purvula in
like?
the portal? Like,
yeah,
that's the question. I mean, they certainly seem to be acting like Bro Purvula is going to be there and going to be the guy. So,
I mean, I think also getting him in the game a lot more now, intentionally rather than just, might be the case of that too. It's also too, like, Penn State has won a lot of football games in the past with guys like Bo Purvula as their quarterback.
absolutely.
So, like, I don't look down on that. Like, that's
Well, and you've seen what big time receivers there can do. Like KJ Hamler was awesome there. They've had first round receivers.
you don't have to have John Elway as your quarterback in college to win a national title. I think that we've gotten to a point where people think that you do, but I don't think you do.
Well,
interesting.
let's talk about a school that may have John Elway as their quarterback. The Florida Gators, DJ Lagway. Listen, the kid's
I like
good.
that, Sam.
That's
No,
an
I don't
interesting.
disagree.
That's an interesting comp, but yeah,
I don't know that I'm comping him to John Elway.
No pushback over here.
I don't know
No
though.
pushback over
Have
here.
you seen how far John Elway could throw the ball?
Yeah, John
in
Elway had a
college?
really big arm and was very elusive. So maybe you're on
Yeah,
something.
Yeah. So DJ Lagway is probably the most exciting freshman quarterback in the country this year. You look at the way that they finished their season and some of the flashes he showed as a starter for the second half of the season. They got to get receivers.
Have to.
Because you look at what he did with Kamir DK and Elijah Badger, who are out of eligibility and were good receivers, but they were not superstars. Like Ricky Pearsall, who was at Florida the year before, was that's a first round guy.
Yeah.
If Florida could get a couple of those, how does that change? And we mentioned Eric Singleton, who the Georgia Tech receiver who just went in the portal. That's one. That's a name I had heard. If he goes in, watch him.
Some intrigue there. And
Yeah.
the thing too there is, like, you are obviously a massive part of the offense. If you are an Eric Singleton and go to Florida, there's also still guys that can take some pressure off of you. Like, you still have to deal with Trey Wilson. You still have to deal with what they're going to do.
I don't know. Well, we'll see if
Bob.
you have to deal with Trey Wilson. We'll see.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
The plot thickens.
Aiden Mizell, I think, is going to be very good there, though.
Sure.
You've got that, and then they need D-line help. Cam Jackson may have played his way into too good of a draft pick to come back.
Sure.
At this point, or they may be able to get him back. But I still think you need like an elite edge rusher, and who goes into the portal. You've seen some, like, Nebraska had an edge rusher go into the portal, but we looked at that and go, okay, Tony White, the DC from Nebraska, is now the DC at Florida State, and this guy's from Mobile, Alabama. That feels like a natural fit. Like, he may be headed to Tallahassee.
Sure.
But that's what Florida, if they get receivers, edge rushers. Somebody in the chat mentioned Lenora Sellers. Like, Lenora Sellers at South Carolina, unbelievably exciting guy to play with. Dylan Stewart, the edge rusher at South Carolina. Like, they've got some great young players.
Talk about trajectory of, like, a place that feels like it's about to explode in a positive way, like a powder keg. I mean, you go get a Barry and Brown to South Carolina. You would get I don't know if this is a name, but Micah Hudson to a South Carolina, like, just a elite skill player. on the
Micah Hudson
perimeter.
was a 5-star receiver.
Yes.
With Texas Tech.
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
You know,
just sprinkle that in. You're good.
The thing that I think is interesting too is that, like, you can go down the list of, like, which teams need what position.
Mhm.
And, like, I think that there's another question that should be asked,
Okay.
which is, should teams be buyers at certain positions regardless, no
Hmm.
matter what? Like,
Well,
should you be a buyer
I'm glad
for a
you br-
defensive end
I'm-
if you don't need one?
Yes,
Should you
because
be
there's
a
always value there. And I'm glad you brought this up, So Gunnar Hansen, who's one of Vanderbilt's offensive linemen.
It's like you go buy him even if you don't have an
Yeah.
overt need for that offensive line position.
Well, Pete reported this morning that Gunnar Hansen is lining up a visit to South Carolina.
Okay. There we
So
go.
that's what I mean. And that they've got a cornerstone left tackle who was a freshman last year, but they're going to need, and you always need help on the offensive line.
Yep.
Always, always, always. So that's, you're right about that, Ari. If you can get a starter quality offensive lineman out of the portal, you can get a starter quality defensive lineman out of the portal, and they want to come to your school and the price is right. Yes.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. And it's like, because like we saw teams taking luxury items last year, right?
Yeah.
Like the one that jumps out to me is Ohio State taking Quinshot Judkins. They didn't need a running
Just
back,
for
but
fun.
They just went and got him
Just for fun.
right? It's like, but like maybe teams should go get a defensive tackle for fun, or an edge rusher for fun, or an offense. You know what I mean? Like a nose guard that can get after the quarterback. So this is just food for thought. But as rosters across the board become less deep, and injuries at critical positions become more detrimental to your ability to compete for or win a national championship, I think you need to be taking players at those critical positions. Even corner is another one that we haven't mentioned. Like if there's a corner in the draft, in the portal that has a ceiling to be in the draft in the future, you go get him, even if you have two corners.
It's sort of the NFL thing. Like
Yeah.
offensive tackle, edge rusher, defensive tackle, corner, wide receiver 1. Like you can never have enough.
More.
Yeah.
That limit does not exist.
Yeah.
And the school that I think did this really well last portal cycle was Miami, and we haven't mentioned Miami, I don't think, once this show.
It's so crazy because they were great at it, and they've been good at combining what they do out of high school with the portal. It's not just portal. Like they're really good at finding big guys in high school, bringing them along or playing them immediately. In some cases, like Maui Noah, the younger Maui Noah started as a freshman. They've had defensive linemen who started as freshmen.
Ruben Bain getting in there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
So, but they also have really plugged in through the portal. And I think probably them not making the playoff this year is the reason we're not having that conversation. We should be, though, because they barely missed it. And if the offseason this offseason goes as well as the last one did, they're going to be, but they need a quarterback.
And there's proof of concept there, too, which would be exciting to me is like, if I can make the pitch, if I'm Shannon Dawson and I'm still at Miami as the OC, I'm saying, hey, listen, Cam Ward is going to probably be a first-round draft pick. He wasn't that way before he got here. Come play in this offense, throw it around the yard, live in Miami, which isn't a bad deal.
Yeah, Coral Gables is a hell of a neighborhood.
Let's get rolling. Like that should be, I think, a portal destination for quarterbacks if I'm in there and I'm looking and they'll take me.
Guys, also, one of the best things about the transfer portal, same thing we love about high school recruiting too, is some of the names.
Yeah, some good names in there.
You ready? You ready?
Hit me.
You ready for the best one so far? South Alabama running back Fluff Bothwell has entered the portal. Fluff Bothwell.
It's electric.
Fluff Bothwell ran 111 times for 832 yards and 13 touchdowns this season. So tearing up the Sun Belt, 7.5 yards a carry. Fluff Bothwell is going to be somebody's bell cow running back next year.
Big Fluffy, baby. Can't go wrong with Big Fluffy.
Yeah.
Fourth and Fluffy is what I would say.
Yeah, he actually showed up pretty big in a game this year that I had some action on the other side of it, and I was like, "Good to see you, Fluffy."
Fluff Bothwell. So, look, if you have no dog in the hunt, or if you're just not sure who your team should be going after, go after the guys with the cool names.
Go after the names. I mean, he's got to have. I mean, with a name like that, like I get you probably don't want to have a pillow NIL deal, but like money is money, like show up somewhere.
You gotta get can you get like a Snuggie deal?
Have to, right? Like, I mean, it's just, you're leaving money on the table.
The marshmallow spread.
Oh, Fluff.
Yeah.
This is Fluff.
There's something there.
For Fluff.
There's something there.
Fluff on Fluff. Oh,
there's
Maybe
something
like
there for sure.
KB Toys, like
William in the chat. Sounds like Fluff about to be a duck.
Speaking of a previous transfer portal name in there, Storm Duck.
Storm Duck. That's
again,
right.
not in the portal right now, to my understanding, but
I think he's out of
I think
eligibility.
he's in the NFL. Yeah,
Finally.
he's in the league. Yeah,
yeah. Flush should get a marshmallow or a Q-tip NIL deal somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess here's my question for y'all when it comes to how we discuss this. Like, I heard y'all talking earlier with Pete Nakos about names that aren't in there.
Right.
But we all have brains that work properly, and we're kind of doing the math. It's like, okay, hey, this guy's OC left. How do you go about approaching that? Especially, you know what I mean? Like, what's fair to mention with someone?
It is really tough because I don't know. We actually, let's say people behind the curtain. We've had internal discussions about this at On3.
Sure.
And we've watched other companies. Like last year, we were watching another company that did a couple stories where they said, well, if this guy entered the portal,
and it was fair.
And people went berserk. They hated it. They were so mad about it. And I think that's the hardest part. You know, I just don't know.
Well, the thing that's interesting, guys, is that in the NFL, there are contracts, so you know definitively when somebody's going to be up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you know when they are going to be a free agent or be on the market. But in the NFL, you have made up hypotheticals about trades
all the time. But it doesn't bother NFL fans because they understand the transactional nature of the business.
Mm-hmm.
College fans, it's different.
Yeah.
Even though it is a transactional business, even though for the players, they're thinking about, this is my career. I need the best fit. For the fans, it's your university.
Yeah.
You want the players to love it as much as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't want, like, you can't think about it that way. And I think that's what bothers people when we talk about guys who are not in the portal yet, who might benefit from going in the portal.
Over the years, too, there's been a certain level of, tiptoeing you'd have to do around certain things as a result of these players not making any money and being amateurs. Like, for a while, like, you just would never want to criticize if a player had a bad game.
Right.
5 years ago, you didn't want to write a column about how that player
sucks. Now if that dude's
it.
making $1.5 million,
But
like, it's no problem.
But like now also too, if they are commodities who are being compensated properly, and this is a transactional business, then there has to become a certain point where your favorite or your Rudy like feelings for your university are secondary. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about the players, I'm talking about the fans.
Yeah.
Like, grow up, Peter Pan. Like, this is the way it works.
well,
like,
I say,
saying it is. So,
no,
like,
so harsh.
I mean, but it's true because, like, it's like, how come when a player comes into a university, that doesn't matter? Like, if they transfer from somebody else, but they come to your favorite school, that's fine. But if a player leaves, then they're backstabbers.
Because people like what like the thing they like, and they want the thing they like to do well.
But it's the same thing.
I know
that I always struggle with, which is, of course they think that, but it's like, you know what? It's okay to talk about things that might make people angry. I'm going to throw a name out there
who's not in yet.
I love where you're going.
I'm going to throw it because everybody said it.
From
Jump in, baby.
He knows. Everybody's talking about him. John Mateer,
thank you.
Washington State quarterback.
Thank you.
Is that why you asked it to begin with?
So I was like, I mean, there are articles out there talking about his the Washington State head coach is being asked, like, hey, is there a chance that he does it?
Ben Arbuckle, their offensive coordinator, has been hired at Oklahoma, and Jackson Arnold has said he's going in the portal.
Right.
We can connect the dots.
We're all doing math here. And so the reason why I say that is I look at this quarterback crop, and no offense to Connor Wegman, Jackson Arnold, I think, still had a raw deal at Oklahoma, could be a lot better than what he saw. But I'm looking at this crop, and I'm like, I don't, as of right now, it's Portal Monday. I, right now, do not see a Cam Ward. I don't see a Riley Leonard. I don't see someone where I'm like, hey, they're going to make the playoff because they got this guy at quarterback. I don't know if John Mateer is that guy, but he would feel like the next closest thing if he were to go to a.
Everybody who saw John Mateer in person this year, who I talked to, said this guy is that dude.
He's so fun.
And if he ever entered the portal, everybody would want him. Now, if he enters the portal, I think we know where it's going. And we haven't even talked. It's interesting. We're an hour in. We've not talked about the do not contact tag.
Yeah.
Like,
don't call me, we'll call you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a prime. If he were to enter a prime do not contact tag, and what that means is what JD just said. Don't call me, I'll call you. Translation, I already know where I'm going.
Is that what it was like for you during dating in college?
Look at this man.
Oh, gosh.
Look at this man.
You said dating in college?
Yeah.
I don't need to give you my number. You just give me yours because I have a wide selection here. So
golly.
The Cornell girls were getting after it out there. Or
I
what?
mean,
Ithaca is gorgeous.
Is it? I've never been there.
It's the t-shirt.
that is the T. There's a lot of waterfalls
get it.
that are gorges. So Gorges, which is like kind of a fun play on words. It's Ithaca. Like there's not so much to
I
do
have
there, but they
literally
got
no idea what
t-shirts.
you're talking about.
Yeah, it's not really super, it's not super important, but to bring it full circle, like John Mateer is that guy who like I could see us being here this time next year and saying, oh, that's the reason why they're in the playoff. That's the reason why this team went from 6 wins to 10 or
Look
11
at the
wins.
arm angle on that throw. It's like
Like-
Cam Ward all over
Hey,
again.
I know we're talking about the portal, and I just have to understand this. In the movie Road Trip,
Oh boy.
is Ithaca College Cornell?
So Ithaca College is the D3 school within the same city as Cornell.
But in the movie, are they trying to
do you
make
know
it-
where do you know where they filmed the on-campus scenes for that movie?
Is it Cornell?
University of Georgia.
No, they
okay.
didn't.
They're in Sanford Stadium.
Really?
Why do I remember that movie particularly well? That is where the movie I went to on my first official date with my wife. So
Wow.
We went to a road trip together?
yes,
That's awesome.
yes.
So will y'all go back and revisit that movie? Like, will y'all watch
Did
that
you guys hold
movie?
hands?
I don't know.
The date one holding hands would have been kind of, that would have been
That's a little
pretty
forward.
aggressive.
That's a big ball
I
of
mean,
play,
we were
though.
engaged 3 months later. So
I guess
you tell
maybe
me.
based on that
You tell me.
timeline,
No kidding.
Yeah, Andy knew what he wanted and he took it.
Hey, talk about do not contact tag.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
I threw the do not contact tag out
Yeah.
real quick.
You
So
know?
you know what I want to get back into?
Yeah,
though,
go for
because
it.
The John
I
Mateer
love
thing is really
this.
interesting. This is our podcast, by the way.
I love
You
this so much.
Yeah,
this is
Yeah,
what
I
you
I'm
just
love
get
this.
sucked into the wormhole.
This
Next
is
thing
so
you know, I'm
great.
asking Andy if he held hands with his wife on his first date.
Yeah, I'm like, am I okay to talk about like the Cornell dating? Like, I feel like I should maybe go back to John
You can
Mateer.
talk about
I love
whatever you
where
want,
we're
man.
going.
This
No, I
is-
love it.
This is electric.
No, I don't have more thoughts on
I
that. That's
think
all I
that
was going to
it's
say.
interesting because in order to get to the Cam Ward level that you're talking about, you have to be a player who has already shown that they are electric.
And he has.
And the only person in the portal, if he were to enter it, would be Mateer.
Yeah.
That has done
Darian Mensah.
Darian Mensah to a certain extent, but also to not to the same.
Also, okay, this is a question we were having, me and Nakos and producer River were having on a group chat last night. The average college football fan, how aware are they of Darian Mensah?
Zero.
Because he played in a group of 5 league, but Tulane's on TV a lot,
Mhm.
and he was really good. But I think you're right, Ari. I think the average college football fan probably doesn't realize there's this awesome quarterback who's
I think even people who bet on games because they're bored don't really have any name recognition when they're watching them.
I think if you played like Oklahoma fans, I would venture to say probably know who
Yeah.
Darian Mensah is because
played
Tulane
against-
game
yeah,
was
yeah.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think if
Yeah.
you're one of those teams, you maybe
Yeah.
know. But I'm with you. I don't think it's a name until you like
Guys,
hit
I don't
the
know that a lot of
portal.
people knew who Cam Ward was at this time.
I don't think that's a crazy take
like.
at all.
I think that like
and
I
he
mean people who are
played
watching the show.
Power 5 conference.
Yeah.
I mean, but on the moon. So
On the
let's
moon.
call it
Palouse
what it-
does look like the surface of the moon. I've
At
been
1
there.
a.m. Yeah. At 1 a.m. I mean, I think you're right. If you're what I would call up at sicko hours and you're betting Hawaii, Washington State, and you're like, I need this over to hit, Cam Ward's your guy.
Yeah.
However, if you're the average college football fan, you're like, oh, good for Wazoo. They still, I know Old Crimson flies on game
I
day.
think there's a disconnect a lot of times between how much time we spend thinking, watching, and consuming college football content in comparison to like what a casual fan would. And that doesn't mean that they're not smart. They just like
It means they have a real job.
they've got
Yeah.
people, they've got stuff going on in their lives where they're not watching Washington State at 1:30 in the morning on Saturday night. And
They have a
that's
life.
just-
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Carlos in the chat asked what quarterback, if any, is Florida State interested in? And we mentioned this a little earlier, Carlos. Thomas Castellanos from Boston College makes a lot of sense for them. And I said this on my show when we found out he was going in the portal. I said, look, or actually, when we found out Gus Malzahn was coming as the offensive coordinator at Florida State. So Castellanos initially signed with UCF when Gus was the head coach to play in that offense. Mike Norvell runs that offense too. So it's not like they're changing offenses at Florida State. But Castellanos in that offense would be kind of fun. So I think that's one you should think about. Okay. Pete Nakos is
Pitching
coming back
change.
to join us. Breaking story
Bringing in the
about
righty.
Carson Beck's injury. And it is I believe it is a ligament that we talk about more when we talk about baseball. Pete, what's going on?
Yeah. So sources tell On3 that Georgia quarterback Carson Beck injured the UCL on his right elbow during SEC
So
Saturday.
that's the Tommy John surgery ligament.
Yes. Yeah. No clear timetable yet. He's trying to get some second opinions. Sources tell On3. So trying to learn more about that. Nothing definitive, but that is what he injured.
Okay, so I didn't go to medical school, but Tommy
Thank
John
God.
surgery, when you hear that, is like I don't know if it's gotten different now because it's more advanced technology, but is that a surgery?
So,
Well, that's why they call it Tommy John surgery.
No, but I'm saying like, but also too, I don't know the mechanics
So,
of throwing a baseball.
It's
and a
different.
football.
It's different.
So, like,
It's interesting. I actually have a little bit. I didn't go to medical school either. Got some really interesting background on this a couple years ago, when I was doing a pre-draft story on Brock Purdy, because he was working out with a QB trainer who at the time was connected to a facility where they trained baseball pitchers as well.
Yeah.
And so one of the sports science guys there was explaining to me the amount of torque on the arm for a football player versus a baseball player. It's very different for a baseball player. So this is not a like, oh God, is his career over injury for Carson Beck, but it is potentially what happens to him in the playoff injury.
Right.
Like he might not be able to play.
Right. So Georgia's going to play in the Sugar Bowl January 1st against the winner of Notre Dame, Indiana. So that gives him, I guess, 3 weeks or so to prepare, but it's really unclear what the timetable is at the moment.
Yeah. And so interestingly enough, we mentioned Austin Simmons a little bit earlier in the show. So Austin Simmons, a baseball pitcher,
right?
He had an elbow injury.
Okay.
As a baseball player that they were worried was going to potentially require surgery. He got a second opinion, found out, okay, I can try to rehab this. He did. And it's what allowed him to play this season.
Yeah.
In football at Ole Miss.
Okay. But just like whenever you hear the word Tommy John, and I know back in the day, like when I was a kid, like Tommy John surgery meant like you were out for like 18 months.
Right.
Well, it still means that if you're a baseball pitcher.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a little different for football. And the other thing too here is like, so the UCL elbow injury is a tear or damage. I can't tell you if it's a tear or damage just yet. I think that's what the second opinion is all about.
Yeah. And that was the thing when we were watching the game, because you were trying to figure out what did he hurt.
Right.
Kirby Smart said hand in the halftime interview, and I was like, no, it wasn't his hand. Because it was the way his arm got trapped. Because it was Trey Moore that was tackling him
forward with your arm.
Yeah,
right.
So
it wasn't
like
the point of contact right around.
It looked like the stress was on the elbow because Trey Moore is holding his arm down and he's trying to push it forward. So the stress would be on the elbow or the shoulder. Now we know it's the elbow, and that's a tough one. So Gunnar Stockton, we saw him play in the SEC championship game. Ari. Maybe the guy. This may be like a Cardell Jones type situation.
I mean, I thought he played as well as he could have given
he played better than Beck played in the game.
Let's call it what it is. Also, too, for as good as Texas' defense was, Georgia moved the ball a hell of a lot better than they probably should have with how limited they were from a play calling standpoint. But you give him 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's my question. Yeah. I'm assuming because Gunnar Stockton's been in the program. He's not he didn't just come in this year.
He's a guy. He was a recruit.
He was a big time recruit. I'm sure he knows the whole playbook, but I imagine when they had to throw him in with limited first team reps at practice, it was probably a limited menu, Pete, of what you
I would
could
imagine.
do.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously right now they got 2-3 weeks to get ready for this next game, try to figure out what's going on. And obviously they'll give Gunnar Stockton more snaps if he's the starter.
Yeah. I will tell you, watching the teammates, especially the offensive linemen, the way they rallied around Gunnar Stockton in that game. That's a well-liked dude. That's a good hang in the locker room.
Yeah, I don't know that my feelings based on this news changes about Georgia in terms of like their basement and ceiling. Do you feel the same?
No, I don't think it changes much. I think, again, it's a small sample size, but against the best defense in the country, I think Texas has the best defense in the country. Gunnar Stockton looked better than Carson Beck.
He won them the game.
Yeah.
So he won them the game.
Also, took maybe the most hellacious hit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That was clean.
Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. Like Carson Beck has not been lighting it up this year. So, I think that there was an experience factor, somebody who's played, almost 2 full years of football for you. You want to have in the playoff as the SEC champion, but it's going to be certainly an interesting situation to monitor.
Yeah, sure. Totally. While we got Pete, I want to continue that John Mateer conversation with Pete, But first, let me tell everybody about Axia Time. That is our presenting sponsor for this lovely transfer portal show. AxiaTime.com, the official timepiece of the college football playoff and of the Heisman Trophy. These watches are gorgeous, and they have pieces commemorating each of the teams in the college football playoff and some limited edition ones that are limited to 100. And so if you want to celebrate your team's appearance, this is the way to do it with style, with grace. These are Swiss made. When you see the specs on these things, you're going to go, oh my God, I cannot believe I can get this watch for this price. And it's gorgeous. And it shows off your favorite school. So AxiaTime.com, AXIA time.com, the official timepiece of the CFP and of the Heisman Trophy. Well, my alma mater didn't make the college football playoff. So if yours did, now's your chance. But no, go to the website. They have quite a bit more on the website, and you'll see it's beautiful. Pete, JD and I and Ari were talking about John Mateer.
Yeah.
And we took the folks behind the curtain of the discussions of, okay, how do we handle somebody who's not in the transfer portal,
right,
but when the dots are so simple to connect, how do we talk about this?
Yeah.
Clearly Washington State would like to keep John Mateer.
Totally.
How would you do that if you're Washington State?
First things first, I don't think John Mateer is driven by money. I've talked to some people around him in the last 2 weeks. If he does decide to enter the transfer portal, this has nothing to do with chasing the biggest bag. It has to elevating where he plays. It's the same exact thing Cam Ward did a year ago from Washington State. I think the one thing, though, that Washington State can do is obviously hire an OC that's going to run an offense that John feels comfortable in. And then, yeah, they're going to pay him well, right? A player of his caliber who did what he did this year probably deserves somewhere between $750 to $1 million. And if you think that's a lot of money, people watching right now, that is not for a quarterback, especially of John Mateer's caliber.
Cam Ward was 1.5.
He pushed more like in the $2 million range.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, at Miami, yeah.
And John Mateer might be, if he were to go in the portal, the most sought after.
He would be 100% as of right now, next to like the Darian Mensah, is like he would be number one, is the expectation. Now, the one other thing too is, as we sit around here and talk about what is John Mateer going to do, the minute he does decide to enter, I will say that my expectation is he's going to Oklahoma. And that's not because I've been getting phone calls about tampering. It's because that's where his offensive coordinator is.
Right. Ben Arbuckle, the 29-year-old offensive coordinator who was great at Washington State, is the Oklahoma offensive coordinator now.
Yep.
And so we were talking about the do not contact tag relative to all this. Can you explain the do not contact tag?
Yes. So the do not contact tag is not, it's less imposing than it comes across, right? So the do not contact tag is just a message to schools saying like, hey, I kind of want to do this on my own terms. I don't really want my phone to blow up for the next 72 hours. I'm going to make the phone calls to schools I want to go to. And yeah, when the do not contact tag is on there, like typically the player knows like the two schools they want to check out and make a decision.
So let's go back to the Georgia thing. I just thought of something real quick because we were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
What Georgia does next year at quarterback. Does this give Gunnar Stockton a chance to say, this is my job?
This is the perfect audition to be like, hey, you don't need to bring anyone in. I'm going to run the show from here on out. We can win a national title with me. That is what this could provide if Carson Beck can't play.
Because they do have Jaden Rashada, who was at Arizona State before. But you took him, if you're Georgia, as a developmental player. He wasn't one you were going to plug in.
You took him so he could compete for the starting job in 2025. You didn't take him so he could step in for Carson Beck. That's the nature of the situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, also too, like, I don't know if it's like disrespectful, but like, has Carson Beck been like elite?
I don't think he's been as good this year as he was last year.
Like,
but I think the guys he has
year.
to throw to are not as good this year as they were last year.
Like, I think that Georgia has shown that the way that their roster is built and continues to be built, that they can, have a lot of success, even if their quarterback isn't a Heisman Trophy finalist.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
So like, I think the one thing about Carson Beck,
with Stockton,
the one thing about Carson Beck for me, right, is like he had such a good 2023. I'm not ready yet to be like,
Yeah.
he's not good or stuff. I just think he's obviously dealing with something when he's on the field right now. I don't know if he's looking at things differently. I don't know if the wide receiver comfortability isn't there.
Right.
We talked about that earlier. All the drops.
Yeah, if you don't have Vlad
It's-
McConkey and Brock Bowers, it's going to be a different
But
situation.
like also too, like my comment isn't that he's not good. I don't want it to be taken
No,
that way. I just don't think that he is a dynamic. He's not the reason they're winning and losing.
He's probably not the first QB off the board in the draft, which is what everybody thought he was going into this year.
And also,
Correct.
too, a Heisman finalist and a dynamic person that is the difference that lifts the team.
Yes.
To victory. Like he
Totally
has
agree.
not been that player this year. So like, but you would expect that a place like Georgia would have that guy.
Yeah.
And like, we don't know what Gunnar Stockton is with more reps and more time and more experience. But like, I am very interested to see what new blood, if it comes to that, in the college football.
Well, the thing is,
manifests
if you're
into.
Georgia, you got to make that decision probably before you play because they've got to buy.
Yeah.
So the quarterbacks who are really good are going to be decided in the portal.
Right.
So you actually have to make the decision. Do you want to bring in somebody to compete with Gunnar Stockton and Jaden Rashada right now? That's a tough spot for Kirby Smart to be in right now.
That's a tough spot. That's a really tough spot. I would also think that so Ryan Puglisi is in the room, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Ryan Puglisi, by the way, is the guy who, when Dylan Raiola was committed to Georgia, was like, I don't give a crap if Dylan Raiola is committed. I'm coming. Yeah. Which I kind of, I mean, that suggests you might be a dog.
And then when that happens, those guys usually tend to find their way.
That was actually Mac Jones. That was Mac Jones's philosophy.
Yep.
When he was going to Alabama, he committed to Alabama. Jalen Hurts had already, was already on campus as a freshman.
Right.
Won the job. That didn't bother Mac Jones. They then add Tua in his class. That didn't bother him either. And he's like, I'll figure it out. And he wound up, winning.
Well, I went to the Elite 11 2 years ago. I think that's where we met, Pete.
Yeah,
was that
we
the
did.
one where Puglisi and
Raiola
were there together?
Yep.
And they were like
Julian
sharing
Sain.
the field. And after the event was over and we talked to the quarterbacks, like everybody was waterboarding him with Raiola questions. And he just like took them like one by one, like, yep, that's fine. Yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going there. I love Georgia. It's going to work out. And it's like, that's the type of personality. It's like, then I wrote a column after the game after the event for the Athletic called with the headline that said, Dylan Raiola may be who Georgia wants, but Ryan Puglisi is what they need, and like it's just somebody.
I think every blue chip type school needs a quarterback like that who's a true believer who wants to be there.
Yeah,
that person may not work out.
Yeah,
but I think there's a good chance they do, and they'll stay longer.
They stay
somebody
longer
else would have
because there's no expectation or entitlement that they're going to be handed anything, and they know going into it that it's going to take time and work.
Gunnar Stockton's also that, by the way.
Yeah. So the one really important part of all of this, right? And January 1st is a little late to get a portal this cycle. Now, obviously, CFP guys can go in after they're done playing, but they're going to know like either he's the guy or he's not. And if Gunnar Stockton isn't the guy, then they're going to be able to have the wherewithal and the intelligence at that point to know that they need to go get a guy.
So I got an interesting question in the chat that I want to throw at you, Pete. Mac Daddy Donk. I just wanted to say that name.
That's an important
more than anything else.
This is going to be good.
He asked, what guys will LSU shoot for in the portal? I don't know. We need specific names.
Okay.
I want to know philosophy more than anything else with LSU in the portal. I think we know they need defensive line help. They need secondary help. Now they've obviously signed DJ Pickett, so they've got some talent coming in the secondary, but their philosophy came under fire last year.
Yeah.
With Brian Kelly saying we don't buy players and everybody else saying, buddy, you better start.
Yeah. I think that LSU is going all in on the portal. I from everything I have been told that they're doing everything they can to revamp the wide receiver room so Garrett Nussmeier has what he needs next year. And then the rest of it is going to be making sure the trenches are where they need to be. And then obviously they did add DJ Pickett, but the secondary has been somewhat of an issue in the previous year.
Well, it's crazy because it felt like LSU forever had dudes in the had 4 NFL dudes in the secondary, and there was always some freshman. Right. If one of those guys got hurt, he could plug in and be like, oh crap, that guy's gonna be a first rounder too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're gonna be
they're DBU.
Yeah.
But they're not right now.
No. I think we'll end up being a little bit surprised about just how aggressive LSU is. That's my
They went from
expectation.
DBU
That's
to-
interesting. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. Before we let you go back to work, Pete, who are the schools that maybe have not been the most aggressive in the portal in the past that in this cycle are going to really be trying to get the best players they can absolutely afford?
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
Oh, I know. Look, it's very something big just happened. I can tell. But
We
no.
put a pick in for Ashton Daniels to land at Auburn. Myself and Steve
Oh,
Wolfong.
look at Ashton Daniels, the Stanford quarterback. Just went in, and Pete's already saying that might be your new Auburn quarterback.
I think Auburn will take another quarterback. But
Well, they
yeah.
also have Deuce Knight coming as a freshman too.
Right.
So
Yep.
that's going to be interesting. Hugh Freeze loading up the quarterback room. All right. So the question I had was, if LSU is going to be more aggressive than they have been in the transfer portal, who are some of the other schools that maybe haven't been aggressive or just haven't had the money to spend that this time around are going to be aggressive, do have the money to spend?
I think that we talked about Nebraska earlier. I'm high on Nebraska. I'm high on what Michigan can do. And then beyond that too, I mean, the Ohio States and Oregons have consistently proved that they want to spend money in the portal.
Michigan, Bryce Underwood signs, but does Michigan go get an older quarterback?
Yes.
Okay.
They want someone who can bridge the gap and someone who can step in and play some football games if they need to next year. And I mean, the last 2 weeks have all been Michigan. They got Bryce Underwood. They stun Ohio State for the fourth year in a row.
Yeah.
But now, right, with the 12-team playoff, they want to make sure they can compete for a national title next year. And that means that they need to bring someone in so then Bryce Underwood isn't dealing with it all as a true freshman.
Yeah, because that's a big program to have to carry on your shoulders.
I mean,
as a
and
true
frankly
freshman.
speaking, they've got a lot of places on their offense that they need help at.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
just
right.
the quarterback. They
Right.
have
They need some receivers.
They need a play caller.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would assume whoever they hire as OC will help us connect the dots on who that older quarterback. Maybe somebody brought this up in the chat, and this was a name I hadn't thought about for Michigan, but I kind of love it. Mac Leftwich, the Texas State offensive coordinator.
Didn't Mac Leftwich just sign with Texas?
Oh, we
Tech?
did. Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Sorry.
Well, sorry, Mac.
It's a great idea.
It was a good idea.
What about the Baylor offense coordinator,
Jake
Jake
Spavital.
Spavital?
Yeah. Well, Jake's sort of proven like I'm the guy that can fix your offense.
Yeah.
Like he did it at Cal, he did it at Baylor this year. Like, yeah.
Cannon country. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's worked at West Virginia. He's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not, it's not entire. He met his wife at West Virginia actually.
Good for
So,
Jake.
there you
Great
go.
for Jake.
I wonder if he took her to see Road Trip.
they're a little bit younger than us, so no, I don't think that was their first date. Pete, thank you so much. We're gonna let you
guys.
get back to work. Appreciate the update on our guy Carson Beck because that's a very interesting situation, Ari.
Yeah.
And also it happens on the transfer portal show, but kind of probably affects what Georgia does in the transfer portal, or at least their strategy.
Yeah.
Because when you had Gunnar Stockton, Jaden Rashada, Ryan Puglisi, none of who'd really played, competing for the job. If you bring somebody else in, it's not really politically that big of a deal. But if Gunnar Stockton leads you to a national title or gets you to the national title game, like that's kind of a different situation.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And guys, I've been dying to have this discussion.
JD's back, by the way.
JD's back.
Glad to be
Like
here.
he never left. Jackson Arnold is so fascinating to me, and I know we talked about him for 30 seconds.
Let's have the whole Jackson Arnold conversation.
Let's deep
I
dive,
mean,
baby.
like-
Put on the snorkel.
So,
take a
like,
dive.
I know that, like, and this is what I was going to say earlier about the point that you made, JD, about how there's no Cam Ward. And it's like, yes, Jackson Arnold's star has dimmed a little bit, right?
Sure, all 5 of them. Just a little bit turned down. Well, we can't say that. Is that
That's
taboo?
perfect.
We
That
can't
was
say
like
that?
perfect.
No, it was funny.
Too soon?
That was
Too
perfect.
soon?
No. That was really funny. I don't know that I would not fire a bag off at him and hope to catch the upside.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I don't think that we have seen nearly enough to make a decision that he can't be good.
Oh, I don't.
I think that we knew
I don't think so at all.
we knew because you compared him to Spencer Rattler. I think we knew far more about Spencer Rattler when he transferred than we know
did.
about
Spencer
Jackson
Rattler
Arnold.
had a lot more to
Yeah.
play with at Oklahoma.
And a lot more time too,
Yeah.
didn't he? If I
All of
remember
Jackson
correctly?
Arnold's receivers got hurt. All of them.
Yes.
He had no
Their offensive line was bad.
Why is this? Why did all 5 of his stars dim?
Well, I think it's fair because, or it's a fair question to ask because of everything we're talking about right now. And it makes so much more sense in reverse when you look at what they were walking into. Like if you told me, regardless of the logo, hey, you're walking into the most difficult defensive line conference in college football. You got a brand new offensive line. You got a brand new OC. You got a brand new quarterback. And oh, by the way, your receiver room will be an infirmary. Like that's just like nobody put Tom Brady back there. He's not going to have success.
Right.
You know, like it's a very, very difficult sample size. And so I'm with you, Ari. I hate that Twitter is so quick to dunk on a kid because of his lack of success and call him a bust and this, that, and the other, where it's like, I don't think we even know what he is just yet based on those circumstances.
Well, and the other thing that goes along with this too, guys, is whether or not he is in a position to go to a place where he just commands a starting job right away. Like he is a very young player, right? Like he's very early in his career. Like what if he went and the reason why he popped back in my head is like, what if he went to Georgia?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, imagine that kid sitting on Georgia's bench for a year or two.
Well, okay, let's.
I don't know if he has the temperament or the desire to do that, but I mean, like, I think everybody's like, oh, he's going to go end up at TCU or something, and it's like, what if he goes in because he's from like that
Dallas
Denton,
area,
right?
Yeah,
Dallas,
Yeah, Denton Geyer. But let's do some dot connection with him because the obvious one that everybody said is Mississippi State, which Jeff Lebby was his OC. That he initially signed with at Oklahoma. Jeff Lebby also recruited him for Ole Miss before Jeff Lebby even went to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So Jeff Lebby was a guy he clearly liked, and an offense he clearly liked that Jeff Lebby runs. So that makes perfect sense that would be where he would think about going.
But like, do you think that Jackson
Tommy
Arnold
Rees recruited him for Notre Dame?
Okay.
Tommy Rees in the NFL right now.
Sure.
It's entirely possible with all these OC jobs open that Tommy Rees winds back up in college football.
Imagine you get the Pete Nakos notification. Jackson Arnold has announced he's committed to the Cleveland Browns. To follow Tommy Rees.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it does kind of sound like a move the Browns would make, if I'm being honest. So, but do you think that his market or that he can rationally command a starting guarantee in this portal cycle, or do you think that he should go to the place that he thinks he can
command
develop?
it at a certain school, a certain type of school?
And how high of a level is that school?
That is
Mississippi State.
How about Auburn? I mean, Auburn's going
Right.
to need a quarterback, and I know there's a pick in for Daniels right now from Stanford. But
Well, and Pete said though that they
Like,
might
what
take
if
another
Jackson
one.
Arnold went to Penn State or something like that.
Why
Like,
would you not take
Why
him?
not?
Why would you not take him? Now, for him too, I wonder too, for him, how much is it like, dude, I don't want to step into the same situation again where I don't have receivers. Like I think the same conversation we had about a Concepcion of like, I'm going somewhere with a quarterback. I'm going somewhere where I can get guys the rock
But what
and I have
happens
an
if-
offensive line.
and this is all hypothetical because
Sure.
we're spitballing here on this show.
I love it.
But could you imagine if Penn State signed Arnold and Concepcion, like how we would view that team going into the following year?
Every preview magazine.
And like also
cover.
too, like they always have a great running back. Their offensive, they play well in the trenches. Their defense is going to be good. Like they actually have a quarterback that has. I mean, because like what was Drew Aller lighting it up his first year as a starter? I don't think
No.
so. Like these guys are very young.
Yeah.
So and
Who else is in that situation?
In the situation of we don't know how good they are just yet.
Well,
Or,
no, of a team that if you added a dynamic quarterback could take or has a good quarterback now and is losing him and might need him.
It's like the number one thing with Jackson Arnold too is that he turned the ball over all the time. Of course he does.
Yeah.
He got his head beaten in.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
But who else?
If we want to squint
program-wise?
Miami, if we squint and say, okay, Jackson
Miami
Arnold
needs
could
a
be your
quarterback.
guy, like, is that irresponsible to say?
Yeah.
You got a thought, Ari, again. I'm stepping on your
No, you
toes here.
didn't. No, you didn't at all.
I see Missouri in the chat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Missouri needs now. I like Matt Zollers, the guy they signed. So Missouri feels like one that they kind of want to take a 1-year rental to get to Matt Zollers.
What about North Carolina?
Well, we need to know who the coach is going to be.
Sure. That's a big variable.
How does Jackson Arnold feel about Bill Belichick? By the way,
It's electric.
when that report first came out that he had interviewed for the job, Ari and I did a video, and I'm like, I know he's not taking the job. Guys, he might
Take the job.
might take the job.
Just gold by y'all, by the way. If you haven't watched that video, go watch it.
I'm
on
gonna
the
go find
channel
my
after
hoodie.
this.
We
It's
went
good stuff.
from like grab ass to like a 15-minute real discussion and then back to grab ass in that video. That's kind of what we do on our show.
It's a great sandwich.
But like I do think that like it was a grab ass sandwich, and I think that like it I talked myself into some stuff there.
Can I say this about Jackson Arnold?
Yes.
I think one thing that I was so impressed by with him this year, dude has all the hype coming into the year, right? Hey, 5-star quarterback, next guy at OU. He's going to carry him in the SEC. Gets benched against Tennessee. Primetime game.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone sees it. I'm sure he's trending on Twitter. And then they go back to him late in the year. Like, to have the competitive psyche to be able to rebound from something that's a public failure like that, that gives me a lot of optimism about him wherever he ends up next.
Well, and the thing I like about him, and we'll mention some of the other guys we talked, like Thomas Castellanos we mentioned. Thomas Castellanos gets benched and he's gone. You only got to go through 12 more practices, dude. Because that if I was the next coach or someone who's considering him, that's a strike against him.
For sure.
Like Jackson Arnold, a lot of guys who were that level recruit at quarterback, when they got benched, would have been like, screw you guys, I'm out of here.
Yep.
He didn't. He got back. He went in and got his head beat in some more when they realized maybe it wasn't him.
Hey, our bad. We actually need you one more time.
Yeah.
Or maybe a few more times.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, go beat
Also,
Baylor.
are we also going to just like not ignore the fact that the man wears a visor and how much better that makes you as a player?
Swag.
Like if you wear that visor,
So-
you automatically get like 10 points on your
Jackson
like,
Arnold,
like it.
Jackson
I
Arnold,
like it a
Florida
lot.
State. Somebody mentioned that in the chat. He's mobile, but I don't think he wants to run as much as
Yeah.
the quarterback in that offense runs.
Sure.
So I'm trying to think of where he would really fit well.
Are we 100% sure
What about Michigan?
that Julian
What
Sainz the
about
guy
Michigan?
at Ohio State? Are we sure?
Well,
I mean,
you know-
Ohio State, Michigan's interesting. I wonder with Bryce Underwood if I'm like, hey, they're paying him a lot of money. I have a few more years of eligibility to use.
I just don't know that Ohio State's going to be in the market for a quarterback. They've got too many.
I also think the Michigan thing, if you're Michigan, because of Bryce Underwood, you're going to want a quarterback who's going to the NFL after next year. And Jackson Arnold could, because he'd be a third-year player, but I don't know that you want, because he's probably not thinking about it that way. He's probably like, I'm just going to try to find a place I can play, and then whatever happens, happens. But
how should he be thinking? 'Cause,
But,
like, if
no, it's
Michigan-
not. But if you're Michigan, you don't want somebody who might be there 2 years.
But it would be perfect for this year.
It would be. Because he's dynamic. He can do all those things.
He's better than anybody they put on the field this year, without question.
By far.
And he had a bad year.
By far.
So, I think that, I'm
How
trying
about
to.
Jackson Arnold at USC?
I was thinking that. I'm thinking about that plus the Maiyava situation. But if I'm Jackson Arnold, I think I can beat out Jade Maiyava.
Right.
Like,
And
I guess the question, though, is Jackson Arnold willing to go through a quarterback competition again?
I think he's built different. I wonder if he wants to. Risk is the wrong word, but like, do you want to be in the portal this time again next year and burn a year? Like, I don't know.
listen,
I don't
if you want to be a big time college quarterback, you're going to have to compete with somebody wherever you go.
I think
Yeah.
I would rather go to a place, no disrespect to Mississippi State, but I think I would rather go to a place where I could be in the center of the conversation
know.
at the
Mhm.
quarterback position. And if it means going through a competition in order to get there, rather than taking the layup and just going to a place where you're not in the spotlight. And I know that you can be in the spotlight at places like Mississippi State. I mean, we just got done talking 20 minutes about Mateer at Washington State. You don't necessarily have to be at Alabama to be a star in the sport, but like, I think that like I would want to go, like USC is a very attractive place to me. Like
Yeah.
I know that, Lincoln Riley just cost me $1,231 last night, but like it is without question,
Inflation.
a good coach to want to play for if you're a quarterback. So like I could get behind that notion. I don't know, but I think that his value is interesting because he doesn't have the Cam Ward stature right now that Cam did a year ago. But I think by the middle of the year in the right situation, he could have that type of production. So it's like
It's still a future play though. It's
not a guarantee.
Whereas
It's a
Cam
future
Ward,
play,
you knew
yeah.
what you were getting because
Mhm.
Cam Ward had a
Well,
lot of snaps.
I think
between
it's also
Incarnate Word and Washington
a
State.
little bit
Sure.
of revisionist history too, because Cam Ward played like a psychopath at Washington State.
Right.
Like I think that Cam Ward like really cleaned it up this year. Like
Yeah.
I know that he
You
had
mean
some
Cam Ward
moments,
had
but-
better players around him this
Yeah,
year?
no, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying
A lot of fumbles.
but hey, guess who had crappy players around him last year? The guy we're talking about. So like it's it is an interesting thought, but like, yeah, Cam Ward played like a psychopath last
Yes.
year or 2 years ago. Let's
Still
be
a
honest.
psychopath,
And he's
yeah.
still a psychopath that
Yeah.
just looks better because
Mac
they've got
Daddy
better-
Donk keeps saying LSU is going to go after Jackson Arnold. If Garrett Nussmeier's back at LSU, Jackson Arnold ain't going to LSU.
No.
One more school, and this is a roundabout dot to connect. Jackson Arnold, Dylan Gabriel, they're boys.
Mhm.
Dylan Gabriel, before Oklahoma, was at UCF. Hey, Dylan, let me shoot you a text real quick. How's Orlando? I got Scott Frost, the guy that probably Dylan Gabriel's. I understand he was under the Heupel era, but like maybe there's some familiarity there. It's Power 4 football. I don't know.
Jackson Arnold at UCF
Could be fun.
could be a lot of fun.
Could be very
Guys,
fun.
What about Oregon?
That's what I was going to say.
What
I'm
about
looking.
Oregon?
They have
Dante
Austin
Moore?
Novosad
Yeah.
and
They have
Dante Moore.
They-
But I was like looking up because I wanted to make sure I wasn't forgetting about somebody before I said Oregon and looked like an idiot. And it's like I know Dante Moore was a 5-star himself from Detroit. He went there to become the heir apparent at Oregon. But like what Jackson Arnold at Oregon?
That would be wild.
Jackson Arnold at Miami.
I like this game a lot.
Yeah.
I like this game a lot.
Miami needs a quarterback.
Miami needs a quarterback. My only wonder about Oregon is I get there and I'm immediately behind a guy I'm competing with who's been in the system for a full year plus a
Right.
plus a
And,
spring.
and Dante Moore, the way he handled that was also kind of mature and unusual for that situation. So mature. Yes.
Some would say Mateer.
Yes.
Some would
But
say.
for those who don't know, Dante Moore is from Detroit, was a 5-star quarterback. He was initially committed to Oregon. He flipped from Oregon to UCLA and played at UCLA as a freshman. Realized, hey, I may not have been ready for that. Goes to Oregon knowing he's going to be sitting behind Dylan Gabriel. And I thought that was an interesting way to play
because
that.
there's a payoff there now.
Yeah.
The question is
Ooh, John Tell in the chat. Won't Indiana need a QB?
it's also crossed my mind.
Coach
Whoa,
Siggs.
whoa. Google him. Taven Jackson's there.
Taven Jackson is there, and they do like him.
Super talented.
Yeah, came in those into the Washington game
Mhm.
and looked pretty good. Was the end of the Nebraska game he played too?
Yes. Yeah.
Was that after Rourke got hurt?
Mhm.
So they like him, but if you can get Jackson Arnold, and I realize we're putting Jackson Arnold everywhere.
No, but I mean, I think to your point, Ari, I
But
think
Jackson
this
Arnold's
proves,
a concept in this conversation, not a
yeah,
person.
that is very fair. But I do think, like to your earlier point you made, Ari, is there a pretty solid market? I think as we talk this through, there's a lot of places that would make sense that probably need a quarterback, and Jackson Arnold's got 5 stars out of high school. Like
I
think there's a
actually
lot-
think
there's a
that
lot
I
there.
would probably put him on my personal rankings in the top 3 right now in terms of package.
Yeah,
the whole
that's fair.
package. But
That's
you know
fair.
that also could blow up in your face if he turns
Yeah,
out to be
so
a bust. So I don't
actually,
know.
let's do that now. I think I know what the 3 are. If we ranked them, we'd go Mateer, Mensa, Jackson Arnold.
Yeah.
Is that how we do it?
Where's Caden Salter in this conversation?
Below those.
4
Really?
probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So assuming Mateer is not in the portal, and as of right now, and again, I could be off.
Right.
on this, I
Mateer's
could be
not
reading
in the
this-
portal.
Okay, so I'm reading the transfer portal rankings over at on3.com, and y'all tell me if I'm just reading this the wrong way. I believe Caden Salter is the most highly rated quarterback on our site. Now, it doesn't mean that has to be our opinion on this show, but I'd be curious to hear, and maybe I guess we're talking about package here as well, but just pure quarterback. I'm like, hey, Caden Salter to place like Auburn, production,
Here's the thing.
experience.
Caden Salter was in the same offense he was in the year before. Loses CJ Daniels, loses some of the, and suddenly everything dips.
Mhm.
And I don't know, because I mean, that's what happened to Jaden Daniels. When Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State, his first year, he's playing with Brandon Ayuk and Eno Benjamin and looks amazing. And all of a
Nice.
sudden,
Yeah.
those guys are gone and he doesn't. And then you put him with, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. And, oh, he's great again.
Yeah.
So maybe it is. Maybe Caden Salter just needs to be around more talent.
I think I'd take it. Of the guys available right now, purely taking just the player outside of the package, I'll take the package as well if we put him at Auburn. I think I'd take Caden Salter as my QB1 right now.
Speaking of which, I'm on our transfer portal page and on3 right now. There's an Axia Time add on.
see that. Yeah,
Ooh.
I'm looking at the SMU watch.
it's electric.
Everyone who watches normally knows how I feel about the pony logo. And I realize, yes, the Ford Mustang, similar logo.
It's identical. It's not similar.
Okay.
Okay.
It's my favorite helmet sticker. It is my favorite helmet logo in the country.
It's literally
It
the
has
same
always been like when I was a kid watching SMU before they got the death penalty, the pony just
I'm a pony.
stuck out. On this Axia watch, It is gorgeous. I'm just telling you right now, the Clemson Tiger product is pretty gorgeous too on it.
I'll get you one so like you can wear it when you come to Dallas and fit in.
Absolutely.
I
Oh
was
yeah,
gonna say.
I can just hang around Highland Park. But Axia Time, AXIAtime.com, official watch of the college football playoff, official watch of the Heisman Trophy, and they are the sponsor of this here transfer portal show. And we are so happy to be working with them. So pumped. And these things are gorgeous. They're beautiful. Swiss made. You look at the specs on this, and then you look at the price, and you're like, wait, that's not possible.
And say the important word here, Andy. They're automatic.
They are automatic.
Yeah.
That's right.
Ari's
a watch guy.
I have
Yeah.
a confession to make. I'm a proud owner of an Axia timepiece of the 2024 College Football Playoff Edition, and it sticks out when you look at in my closet because it's the nicest thing I own. So I just wanted to just as a consumer of their product, I can co-sign.
So we
is
know it
tremendous.
pops off of athleisure. We
Pops
know
off.
that.
Exactly.
So you got the one that has
Exactly.
the college football playoff insignia on the bezel?
I do.
Ari's a watch guy. He knows words like bezel.
Yeah, I don't know what a bezel is, but I was like, it has the logo, so it must be the bezel. Yeah.
No, they're pretty watches.
Check out axiatime.com, AXIAtime.com, the official timepiece of the CFP and the Heisman Trophy, and the official timepiece of this here transfer portal show, which we're wrapping up, guys. We've had some fun here, but this is going to be a really interesting next month because it's a 20-day period that the guys have to enter their names in the portal. Once they're in, they can make their decision for their school at any time. But let's be realistic about this. Most of these people are going to be going somewhere for the spring semester, which starts in early January.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you check the Axia timepiece. It's not far away.
Yeah.
So you wonder if we start seeing those Pete Nakos alerts pop up, the transfer portal on 3 alerts pop, the Hayes Fawcett alerts pop up of like, hey, ex quarterback, ex playmaker headed to.
Oh, I'm
Blake.
glad you mentioned that. For folks who want to keep track of this minute to minute, set your notifications on X, formerly Twitter, at transfer portal _. So that is On3's official transfer portal feed on X at transfer portal _. And so if you had an alert set for that 3 minutes ago, you would have gotten an alert about some intel that Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos put out. An early school to watch for Darian Mensah, the Tulane quarterback. Syracuse.
I like that. I like
Kyle
that a lot.
McCord. We're kind of bringing the show full circle. We started with Kyle McCord because he was the bomb that dropped on the day the portal opened last year. He had an incredible year at Syracuse. Said, you know what? I'm going to be a good NFL quarterback.
The blueprint is obviously there. And who wouldn't want to go play for Fran Brown, help him get some more showers under his belt? I mean, who wouldn't want to go help that guy get squeaky clean every single Saturday?
That's right. Only winners get showers.
Only winners get washed, baby.
Darian Mensah.
I like
that is
that.
a great piece of intel. So if you're following at transfer portal _, then you got that. Oh, here's a name. This guy might be the official transfer portal mascot. He's only entered it twice. This is only the second time he's entered it, but I feel like more drama surrounds this man in the transfer portal.
Can I guess who it is?
Yes.
Did he post a picture of a LA apartment at any point?
Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah, go ahead.
Former USC and Georgia defensive lineman Bear Alexander is officially in the transfer portal.
Here we go, baby.
Now, we've known for a while he was going in. This was, again, one of my questions that I had. I had this about him, about Jaheim Otis, about Thomas Castellanos. Like, let's say things are not going your way. You're not playing as much as you want. Why are you leaving the team and then saying you're going to enter the portal? Just play out the season. It doesn't change anything for you. So, like, for Bear Alexander, like, you're a defensive lineman who is 310 pounds. You can move. You're going to get in an NFL training camp. Like, you don't need to worry about eligibility, like keeping an extra year of college eligibility.
Yeah.
Just go ball out somewhere and then go to the NFL. Like, you could have finished this season at USC very easily.
You just created another question for yourself when
Yeah.
you get to the combine of like, hey, why didn't you finish the year at USC when, you know, obviously there's going to be at some point in time, you would imagine as the year progresses, snaps to be had on that offensive line. Like, you're leaving in
It's one thing
September.
if you're a guy who you know is not going to play in the NFL and your best earning potential is right now in college, Bear Alexander will get a chance to play in the NFL because there are not enough humans like him to populate NFL rosters.
Yeah.
He will get a chance. So that part I never understood, but now he is officially in the transfer portal. Drama comes because drama's always come with him.
And I'm very curious to see too, as we get further into this whole portal era, one, how common does that become where we see guys after 3 games say, I'm going to save the red shirt. I'm going to go ahead and go play somewhere else next year. And then 2, how do schools evaluate that as it becomes more and more common? It's kind of like, and this is not a good comp, but this is just what it makes me think of. Like when everyone started skipping bowl games, I think the immediate take was these guys don't want to finish the year with their brothers. And like, that's honestly like still a little bit of the way that I feel transparently. But
Right.
you circle back to it. Like, I don't think NFL GMs looking at the bowl game and saying,
No.
what's wrong? Like, I wonder if college coaches are like, you did what's best for you. Come play for us. We'll have a good time.
Yeah, but I think you also, I would bet that people who know the guys on the staffs that have dealt with certain guys are going to go, I'm going to shy away from him because my buddy tried this. He told me what's coming. Or maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you're like, there's only so many 310 pounders who can move in the world. I can get one.
Yeah. Yeah. We need a D tackle. Let's make something happen here. Yeah.
Or
Curious.
it's like it's the rom-com situation. Every rom-com in the world, the plot is, the girl's like, but I can fix him.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of coaches out there, but I could fix him.
Yeah. And I mean, to some extent too, if you're giving up 6 yards a carry, you're like, we don't, like, what else are we doing here? Like, it can't get worse, but then if you add someone to your locker room that isn't a fit, and I'm not saying that's Bear Alexander, I'm not saying it is, but it could get worse.
I appreciate that. So
worse.
Micah Tease from Texas A&M just posted the email he got officially entering him into the transfer portal. In case you wanted to know what sort of correspondence goes back and forth.
Yeah.
So here's what it says. So it has your name, your NCAA ID, your sport, and your current school. And it says, Texas A&M University College Station has submitted your notification of transfer. Your information is now visible in the NCAA transfer portal. Please contact your institution's athletics compliance office if you have any questions, if you want your notification or transfer withdrawn, or to designate that you do not want coaches to contact you.
Interesting.
Note, the purpose of the transfer portal is to permit permissible communication with NCAA coaches once your name has been entered into the transfer portal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what it says officially if you go into the portal.
Interesting. Can I take us to a team that I don't know that we've hit on yet that was kind of like a portal sniper a year ago?
Absolutely.
Ohio State just took what they want. We talked about it. Like, they took Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs more or less for fun. Like, they packed a heavy suitcase for a national title kind of trip. Doesn't go the way that you wanted it to in the regular season.
Right now.
Flight's delayed.
Yeah.
Flying standby. Could still get there. Let's just go ahead and walk this through and say they lose at some point in the playoff. I mean, call it the second round, whatever you want. How difficult is it then to convince the powers that be to pony up that kind of capital, or whoever, to go after a Caleb Downs this year, to go after a Quinshon Judkins, whoever that is in this portal next year? Like, does Ohio State play into the portal the way they did this past year yet again?
Well, I think they have to.
Do they? Okay, yeah.
Because look at how much they're losing.
Yeah, that's a fair point. We talked about Jackson Arnold.
Listen, Ohio State is going to operate like Ohio State every year. That's how they operate. The thing that is most interesting about Ohio State in the current setting is that all the money they spent last year seems to be for nothing. And like, you don't, and listen, we got a month here where things can feel a lot different if things go a different way. But I think that's the challenging part. But that doesn't mean they're not going to do it again. The biggest challenge for Ohio State for me is there's really nothing left to fix the problem that they have. It's not that they don't have good enough players. Maybe they allocated their money poorly and didn't get a good enough offensive line, or their kicker stinks, or whatever. You can quibble, but nobody's ever going to assemble the perfect team that has no. You can spend all the money in the world, you're still going to be an injury away or a weird thing away from having a blemish somewhere. They fired a bunch of coaches last year that were and rehired them. They went out and got a quarterback. They went out and got the best safety in college football. They spent money on Quinshon Judkins when they didn't need him. Like, what is your number one path to fixing the team, JD? Like, it's like, I mean, they're going to have a ton of turnover. They're losing their entire roster, basically.
Yeah.
This team was last year's Michigan, where everybody came back. So they're going to have to go in the portal and fix some stuff, and they will. But you enter the offseason, depending on how this season ends, feeling very... Last year when Ohio State won and sniped, people forgot about the Michigan game.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, God, they won the offseason. Look what they did. The juggernaut has been awoken. They are no more of this. This year, they're going to do it, but it's not going to distract us from what happened.
Interesting.
Like, at a certain point, you have to have results, and they haven't beat. They have a senior class that's leaving Ohio State right now that has never won the Big Ten. Like, think about that. They've never beaten Michigan. Like, I didn't think the last time you could say that about a senior class is 30 years ago. So we're as we go into this analyzing Ohio State, I don't think that there's ever going to be a question that Ohio State's going to stop buying guys or they're going to stop trying to have the best team. That's who they are.
Mm.
Is it enough is the question to me.
Yeah.
Interesting. So a little news as all this is going on, because all this is interrelated. I mentioned Caleb Banks earlier, the Florida defensive lineman who had played really well down the stretch. And would Florida need to go into the portal to get an impact defensive lineman because Caleb Banks was going to the NFL? He is not. He has just announced that he is coming back.
He had a really good year.
He had a great year.
Big win.
So that's a huge one because that type of person is hard to find.
Big game Billy, baby.
Yeah.
Look at this guy.
Well, they found Caleb Banks in the portal, but that not at the level of that he was playing at the end of this season. To find somebody to replace that would have been difficult. Now they don't have to.
Is there a team with higher stock in the state of Florida than the Florida Gators right now? Doesn't feel like it.
No,
I
think Miami still probably does, but the fact that Cam Ward's done is the problem. But and everybody wants to play with DJ Lagway. I think that the two quarterbacks right now, if you asked everybody around like who would you want to play with, DJ Lagway at Florida, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sellers was a redshirt freshman, so if he has a really good year, he could go to the NFL. Lagway's got 2 more years of Florida, but both just young quarterbacks that kind of feel like we were only scratching the surface of what they can do.
For sure.
Those are the two guys, if I'm a receiver, I'd be excited about playing with.
I want to go play with those guys. I'm curious to see what South Carolina does at OC without Dow Loggins. I wonder if that factors in, but massive for Florida.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's huge. It's very big.
So that is the news, but this is all, again, all of this is interconnected. We talked about the Carson Beck injury. What does that mean for Gunnar Stockton? What does that mean for Georgia in terms of, do they look at a quarterback in the transfer portal, or do they have what they want on the roster to compete for 25 already? All of this will get figured out in the next month or so. We're going to see more names in the portal. The do not contact tag guys are going to start popping in the next day or so because they're not telling anybody that they're going in the portal. They're going under the cover of darkness, and their names are going to pop in the portal, and we're going to go, whoa, that guy's in the portal? It's coming. It's coming. The portal is open for business. It's our business here at On3 to tell you what's going on in the portal. So stay tuned. The On3 Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, thumbs up. Follow On3 Sports on Twitter. Follow at Transfer Portal _, which is our official Transfer Portal feed. Follow at Pete Nakos _. Follow Steve Wiltfong, because that's going to be your source throughout this very tumultuous period in college football. And of course, watch the Hard Count with JD PicKell. Watch Andy Ari On3. We'll be there for you every single day. Thanks so much. Thank you to Axia Time for sponsoring this show. We'll talk to you again soon.